in the steering committee for the East Africa Youth Peace Network, let me not catch you in any other group. You have to go to the Peace and Security group. Anybody who is in Ikoyaka or recently joined the Africa Youth Business Council, please find yourself in the business group, because it will not make sense for you to take all the skills and competency into another group. And then, of course, I'm expecting and hoping that government will try as much as possible to populate the politics group, even as other people join the group on politics. Does that make sense? All right. Now, can I see how many of us are volunteering for the politics group? Straight up. For the first time, there are very few people for this politics group. Okay, let me see the hands for the people who are volunteering for the business group. Business? Straight up, I need to see you. Okay. Peace and security? Wani, your hand has to be up. Peace and security. You have a suggestion? Yes? I can hear you. Community development cuts across, but I'm kindly requesting you to just focus on the theme you're going to choose. When you come back, the chairperson of the group is going to present, and then the plenary will be allowed to make additions of what they want to add. So if you really feel that there's something you want to add onto politics, but you must go to business, don't panic. I'll give you an opportunity to actually give feedback, add onto the document they're going to come up with. Is that okay? Is that a plan? Yeah, because everything fits in everything. Even peace matters are controlled by politics, you know? Gender equality issues are very heavily political matters, but we must figure out a way to work, and then we are going to combine all those into one post-summit agenda. Let me see the hands for peace and security again. Wani, your hand should be up. Malaki, let me not find your hand down. Good. Okay, now let me see the hands for gender equality. Hands for gender equality? Straight up. Don't be raising them like you're unsure about good. So I'm hoping that everyone has selected a group. So I'm going to first request that you come here and take a spot. And let me have the politics people here. Let me have the business people somewhere in the sun for a few seconds. And then let me have peace and security people on that corner, and gender equality here. Mobilize yourselves quickly so that we get out of the sun. Tobias, come.
Oh, yeah. Oh, na, na, na. Sometimes what you dream can be receiving. Na uwezi kuvuna usichokipanda. Thanks God for giving. Yetu sikuwa na umeme wala kepo. Hizi moja t-shirt na yepo. Iti leo na miliki lebo. Lebo konde gang lebo. Siku zote kisichokuwa kitakufanya uwe ngangari. Hata mwanga uwezi kumjua, so ishi nao kwa tahadhari. My sister squeeze shape wananunua, uwe pambana upate salary. Ila usisahau pesa maua, so ukikosa hata usijali. One love kwa wanangu wa kita, nyie ndo mnanunua CD. True love kwa wanafiki wa Insta, mnafanya niongeze bidii. We love kwa master na lita, mlinifanya hasira zizidi. Oh love, njia ngumu nilizopita mkanipa na jina mkasema niitwe Konde boy yapo sisi sauti yake. Nikianguka nitainuka tena, so usishangae waite Bwana aso peke yake. Cause I know unapokiokota ndo wakati wa kutunza ili kesho kisijepotea, na unaposota ndo wakati wa kujifunza ni wapi ulipokosea. Kama siwezi kujibizana ila mwenzenu nimeumbwa na subra, cheki madiri yanavobongana, cause nyota yangu ni ribla. Unasiwaona walotumwa kunitukana, vichwa vyao viko kibla, tena siku hizi hata simbi sana, acha washindane na Ibra. Ase one love kwa wanangu wa kita, nyie ndo mnanunua CD. True love kwa wanaki wa Insta, mnafanya niongeze bidii. We love kwa master na lita, mlinifanya hasira zizidi.
I didn't say go. Guys, I did not say go. I said stand here. I need to give some instructions. I said stand here first. Peace and security here. Politics here. Sorry. Politics here. Business here. Peace and security that corner. Gender stand here. Don't go, stand here. Can I please see you guys in your groups, eh? Oh, are the people sitting there, peace and security people? Okay, now, please, DJ. Listen, guys, listen. First assignment. Elect your chair now and send your chair here. I like the democracy in politics. Oh my goodness. Elect your chair now and send them here. Madam Chair. Politics, DJ, politics, we know you. Order. Group of politics, we know you people and your ways. Can you quickly elect a chair and send them here? Business, I'm not seeing your chair. Business, I do not see your chair. You're supposed to be the most organized people in society.
Make me confused. Bring your body close to me. Something nice, something sweet. Monica, mambo rote, kanipa, nimege, goja kwanza. When you hear the sound, make it turn around.
Business, I do not see your chair. Business, you people normally work faster than politicians. I want to see your chair approach.
La 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 la. Shombe shombe mtoto laini. Wanga wape vidonge nimebaini wanatapatapa.
Hey, you're Tron.
Eti nimemlambisha ananambia chumbeza tena nikizidisha
DJ, my people are working, so keep the music soft, eh?
Watoto wa bibi wanacheza kote mpaka kwenye matope, wanavua wigi kama wamegombana na ebito. Fanya kama unadukua, unanengua, napika na pakua, chukua.
Father said there's more politics in the music.
than 10,000 alumni and over 30 partners. An active partner-led work in all 5 major African regions. A One Young Africa is our vision.
We have a great vision. We're envisioning 150 delegates in person, 20,000 virtually, but this is not to me the only success indicator. The success indicator is ensuring that all these 20,000 young people virtually provide inputs and meaningfully engage throughout the conversation, and all their suggestions are then incorporated into our post-summit agenda.
Look at 2017, just East Africa coming together, and now thousands of African young people.
YouLead Summit 2021. We are proud to announce that we are going continental, coming together as a One Young Africa.
And we want actually to break the borders. The CFTA is here. We want African young people to come together under YouLead Summit platform, trade together across the borders, innovate together across the borders, and create jobs as well as prosper together.
That's what drove us to become, One Young Africa. We have the potential and the capacity to do so.
From 8th to 12th November 2021, we are hosting Africa's largest hybrid summer ever with YouLead Africa's patron, His Excellency Jakaya Mrisho Kikwete, former President of Tanzania as Chief Convener, and Honorable Dr. Peter Matuki, the EAC Secretary General as co-convener. The theme is The Future of Africa, creating jobs, feeding and housing the world's youngest continent.
I call upon policymakers, development partners, the private sector, media, civil society, and other stakeholders to be part of and support the East African community in convening this year's YouLead Summit.
It will attract participation from all the partner states of the EAC and indeed the continent. I thank you. Asanteni sana. See you in Arusha. Tujenge vijana wetu.
Since 2017, YouLead Summit, as popularly known, is jointly convened annually by the East African Community and MS Training Center for Development Cooperation in Arusha, Tanzania, in collaboration with a myriad of partners.
COVID-19 is both a blessing and a curse, equally.
We have seen how the COVID pandemic has hit very hard young people.
And this is why YouLead Africa will bring together more than 15,000 people on a single platform, because travel is restricted, but more people come together through the internet, courtesy of COVID-19.
We are welcoming a virtual and physical audience from all African countries together on the same platform.
Nonetheless, COVID-19 has reduced the opportunities for young people. Young people have lost jobs, and COVID-19 pushes us beyond the boundary to innovate and create jobs that we have lost using COVID-friendly mechanisms such as online platforms, as well as increased cooperation between and among young people across the borders, especially under the CFTA, which regards that trade should happen beyond borders of any country.
At One Young Africa.
YouLead Summit 2019 is the Africa that we want.
And I really appreciate YouLead Summit for giving us a platform on how we can build a collective power to create a sustainable movement that will help us create change in our society.
So I'm very, very happy to participate in YouLead Summit 2019.
YouLead Summit is really awesome.
YouLead Summit Youth Power.
YouLead Summit is empowering.
YouLead Africa, a One Young Africa, where dreams are born and youth become leaders.
Tusonga mbele mama Afrika, Afrika, Tusonga mbele mama Afrika, Afrika,
Por favor, Africa. Mwishani wonse.
Country, yeah. We gotta work together. We are leaders now.
shape young men and women. With the pillars, with the future, here we are. Let's join together with ability to change communities, with love, with peace, to respond to our need, to call for unity. Africa, hear me cry. Never leave me alone. As I see light in a brighter future, let's join hands for youth and women. Let's join hands for youth and women.
I lead, we lead together. So you lead, I lead, we lead together. We will lead, we will lead. Let your dream be a reality. We will lead, we will lead. Let your dream be a reality.
Yeah, vijana wa Afrika wote waungana, vijana vijana kutoka mashariki, magharibi, kaskazini na kusini, hata na kati, twaja pamoja ili tufanye nini?
So you lead, I lead, we lead together. So you lead, I lead, we lead together. We will lead, we will lead. Let your dream be a reality. We will lead, we will lead. Let your dream be a reality.
Hello, Kunjani. Search Bakai. Kiana. Bravo. Amahoro. Mambo.
YouLead Summit 2020 theme was Development is People, Youth at the Center of the Peace and Development Agenda. The summit was brought closer to thousands of delegates through a specially designed virtual summit platform, making it possible for delegates to participate through a hybrid setup that was adopted when the COVID-19 situation limited cross-border travel. With the Regional Summit Center in Arusha, Tanzania, at the East African Community Headquarters, and National Summit Centers in Bujumbura, Kampala, Kigali, Nairobi, and Juba, an even broader online audience was able to participate. Day 1 was dedicated to Youth in Politics, the East Africa Under 40 Political Leaders Forum, reinventing leadership for East African millennials. The summit facilitated a set of intergenerational conversations between young leaders, policymakers, and key national and regional political actors in order to solidify a common purpose, understanding, and solidarity between them. The Nairobi Summit Center played host for Day 1, and key sessions were held simultaneously via live telecasts between the EAC headquarters in Arusha, Nairobi, and Juba, providing for a unique hybrid experience. The highlight of the summit and Day 1 was the acceptance by His Excellency Jakaya Mrisho Kikwete, former President of the United Republic of Tanzania, to become the patron of YouLead. Key outcomes launched the process of developing the East African Youth Governance Architecture Report and the East African Youth Manifesto, the East Africa We Want, broadcasted an intergenerational roundtable dialogue on the leadership for the East Africa We Want, and a roundtable conversation on the leadership for the East African Community We Want to inform the curriculum for the East African Emerging Leaders Fellowship Program. Day 1 also featured the Gender Equality Forum, Young Women Mobilizing Towards Goal 5 of Agenda 2030 and Aspiration 6 of Agenda 2063. Young and senior women gathered virtually and in Arusha for an intergenerational conversation on young women's participation in leadership towards realizing meaningful inclusion of young women in good governance and leadership, to tackle several questions which had been raised and co-created by young women in the region through the leadership of Plan International Kenya. And of course, the icing on the cake on Day 1 was the evening fireside chat with His Excellency Jakaya Mrisho Kikwete, who freely mingled with the young people and shared words of wisdom with the delegates. Day 2 was dedicated to the East African Youth Forum on Peace, Youth at the Center of Peace Building and Conflict Prevention. The forum was dedicated to providing an opportunity for youth to have their voice heard and strengthen their ability to engage in peace and security and contribute towards building an effective, well-coordinated coordinated and responsive youth sector that acts in solidarity within the region. The discussions focused on the vulnerability of youth in conflicts in the region and the role youth can play in peace building, ensuring sustainable security and stability in East Africa. The forum was led by the YouLead consortium in South Sudan, with sessions at the EAC headquarters, Arusha, Juba, and virtually. The chief guest being Rebecca Garang, Vice President of the Republic of South Sudan. Key interventions proposed in the forum include consolidate an East Africa Youth Network for conflict prevention and peace building, capacity building for young peace builders on reconciliation, mediation, and arbitration, peer-to-peer roundtable conversation for experience sharing on the implementation of peace and conflict resolution mechanisms, peace building advocacy training for youth in the region, and capacity building for youth on implementation of UNSCR 2250. A series of high-value breakout sessions were also held in the afternoon, facilitated by a number of consortium members. Day 3 was dedicated to the East Africa Under 40 Business Leaders Forum, accelerating economic opportunities and decent work for youth, and the East African Youth Enterprise Awards. Introduced in November 2019, the forum has gained traction in the region, especially amongst young CEOs, entrepreneurs, and innovators. The 2020 forum, jointly hosted by Burundi and Rwanda, was composed of well-structured sets of sessions focusing on youth-specific policy and capacity issues, resulting in a set of outcomes that could be taken up by the EAC member states, development partners, and other actors. In addition, the YouLead program piloted its first ever East African Youth Enterprise Awards, recognizing youth-led businesses across the East African community, the partner states which in the current COVID-19 pandemic global context had managed to remain resilient and are simultaneously taking deliberate, innovative actions towards providing decent livelihoods and confronting the most pressing issues of our region, especially those affecting women and youth. Day 4 was dedicated to post-summit agenda development, as well as creating a strong alumni network, the YouLead Action Network, and the agenda of action based on the outcomes of the national level pre-summit events. This resulted in a common regional agenda for action and country-specific interventions. Day 5 was a follow-up of Day 2 and was dedicated to combating violent extremism and promoting safety online, resources for youth-led NGOs. The session was facilitated by Facebook, with panelists and participants joining both virtually and in Arusha, Tanzania. To all our lead partners for 2020, thank you for your continued commitment to YouLead ambitions. Your participation and support have enabled us to meet several of our goals for 2020. We look forward to continued success together with these collaborations as we pursue the post-summit agenda implementation.
Tusonga mbele mwa Afrika, Afrika,
Once again, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the inaugural Arusha Debates 2021.
So, what are the Arusha Debates, Joy? And I'm sure everyone is wondering, what is it about Arusha Debates?
Arusha Debates is such a conversation that will answer these hard questions, examine the challenges Africa faces, and the solutions that should come out of Africa to solve Africa's topmost challenges. We believe that Arusha Debates will answer the question of what is Africa's problem, what is the exact solution, and according to Africans. That's the essence of the Arusha Debates.
I like the idea of having a forum where people from all walks of life and from the various social, economic, and political backgrounds sitting together under one roof to discuss issues of common interest. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it is now my singular honor and pleasure to declare the inaugural Arusha Debates officially open.
You can make Africa the factory of the world. It is possible. Today, we depend a lot on making other parts of the world the factory. We can make Africa the factory because we have the resources. We have natural resources, we have the human resources, we have the capacity. So therefore, it's about taking advantage. And the time is now. and you have that opportunity.
We think that when we use these Arusha debates as a moment of reflection, a moment of self-clarification of what we need to do as a continent, that will be very, very helpful for the young people. As you can see, the Arusha debates is something within the youth summit.
The AFCFTA is ultimately about reclaiming the dignity of the African by accelerating homegrown development solutions. So what can be done to make sure the promise is a reality? 3 key messages. 1, build productive capacity. 2, strengthen enabling environments. And 3, change mindsets.
Each one of us must know that this is part of who we are for us to be able to integrate. And His Excellency talked about why don't we make the Arusha debate better than the WEF? I would say it's already better. It's already better because you only have youth here. It is an inclusive process. And so it's not so much like, are we going to make it better than the WEF? It's how do we, continue to keep it ahead of the WEF because of its inclusive nature. The WEF is not an inclusive system. It is great as a platform, but I think, again, this is where Africa joins the rest of the world by demonstrating that we can do what the world is doing, but do it better.
It's really possible. It comes back to making sure that, the leaders, the members of the public sector work closely with members of the private sector, ensure that they have that willingness to make things happen. So those are really the key perspectives that I would like to provide as we discuss doing business, as we discuss, conducting trade in Africa.
We need to trade for what we need. And I am an advocate that we need hard skills. We need to look at the policies that will train the youth on hard skills.
We need to challenge ourselves. The colonies left so many years ago. We cannot sit here and blame our colonial heritage. We have failed our continent, and each of us needs to go and think about what is right for their countries, what is right for the sub-nationalities in their countries, and begin to challenge these notions of a national curriculum and a nationalized, standardized test, because these often do not work.
So I am super excited to be part of the coordination of this continental bootcamp for young leaders and policymakers. We have more than 15 countries participating in the one-week bootcamp, where we are going to be exploring socio-economic development arenas, policy formulation and frameworks, and young people's spaces to make influence in these spaces.
We're looking for solutions. Are you a problem solver, or are you adding to the problems? I hope that whatever we are going to learn here is going to be applied and applied until Africa's is boundaryless, and Africa movement of young people has that freedom, so that we do not need these papers they call visas, what have you. You are the hope of Africa.
Bringing together people from the different sectors is a way where we can learn from each other, and we can inspire each other, and we can promise each other that together we can actually do something different. So this is an opportunity to influence each other, not only at this bootcamp, but also at the YouLead Summit next week, where you can really push for change.
The opportunities, the resources are in your hands. It is time now to drive Africa. The Africa we want lies in your hand. It does not lie to our elders, it lies in your hands. It lies in the hands of the youth. Asanteni sana. I wish you a good deliberation. With that, I officially open this bootcamp. Asante sana.
From your applications, you have demonstrated that you're already practicing leadership somewhere. So our only job is to alert you about your personality, who you are as a millennial, and how you relate to leadership. And then maybe in the conversation that you're going to have, we will try and ensure that then you become the best you can be as a millennial?
So to be in this boot camp is to be reminded that the young people are not homogeneous. We're not all the same. We come from different economic backgrounds, different social backgrounds, and just appreciating that fact as a young leader is going to help me a lot in making proper advice to the board that I serve in. I've also been reminded about the power of engaging young people, organizing them beyond mobilization. So I had not fully become aware of the distinction between mobilization and organization, and the bootcamp has already opened me to that awareness. So I'm very grateful for that.
I think one of the very things that resonated with me in policy formulation was the issue of privileges. That was one of our first lessons. It resonated with me because I believe in public policy, it's easy to make policies that ignore a minority. The issue of privileges means some people get to enjoy certain freedoms, they get to enjoy certain rights, they get to enjoy certain fruits of public policy that others are not better able to enjoy. Going forward, in policy formulation, there's need to include people from different walks of life, people who enjoy different privileges.
Within the bootcamp, we're trying to see how can we harness this potential that Africa's young people have to move us into the future that we need. But on the side of the policymakers, we are hoping that this can create a renewed sense of trust and social contract, where the policymakers are able to understand the young people's challenges and the gaps there is, but also areas of how they can go back in their respective countries and create conducive environments where young people are able to thrive within their spaces.
So you lead, I lead, we lead together. So you lead, I lead, we lead together.
Dear God, we thank you for this summit. We pray that it is a blessing to all of us. Let us all deliberate and make Africa a great continent and Africa the place that we call home and shine that light to the world.
I was wondering how best I could honor and include young people's concerns, challenges, and innovations within the 5 days of this year's summit. Luckily, the fears faded away by the time we commenced the work.
Tusonga mbele mama Afrika, Afrika, Tusonga mbele mama Afrika, Afrika,
Transformation of any young person will begin with a mindset change. As young people, we need to know and believe in the power of showing up. You need to show up. Participation is serious, necessary business.
You have to take initiative to do something small within where you are. As a young person, when you are leave that space for another young person like you.
The journey has been beautiful, and here together we are. I'm happy to say today, after 5 years of East African journey, we also are joined by an Africa-wide audience, an Africa-wide delegation from all the African regions.
Over 60% of Africa's population is under 25, making Africa the world's youngest continent. And what does that mean for us? It is also known that Africa is the richest continent in resources, and this includes human resources.
I wish you all a nice stay in Arusha and fruitful deliberations during your YouLead Summit 2021.
We must replace fear with love, peace, joy, faithfulness, goodness, passions, creativity, innovation, and self-control.
We are going to make Africa very green. And I want to challenge all of us, here the youth, to follow Sharon and what she's thinking about this continent. And I think that is the way to go.
This is a very successful culmination of dedicated efforts of the YouLead consortium of youth serving organizations and the YouLead Secretariat. Ladies and gentlemen, education is central to the development and improvement of lives of young people who are the present and future of Africa. If you fail, you will have failed your generation. So this is the point I'm saying here. It means that young people are also held accountable for their actions. And for you young people, you must know you are representing your peers. If you don't perform, you are letting down your generation. In conclusion, allow me to borrow the words of a senior brother and a long-standing friend of mine, the late Kofi Annan, when he said, and I quote, "You are never too young to lead. You are never too young to do that which you believe in." You young people are going to change Africa. You are going to change the world for the better.
Your craft or your trade. And since leadership requires collective effort, work methodically and patiently through a problem, splitting it into various parts, remembering the diversities and nuances that may not be apparent at first glance. Ladies and gentlemen, honorable members, with this many remarks, allow me to declare the 5th East Africa Youth Leadership Summit officially open.
We will lead, let your dream be a reality. We will lead, let your dream be a... Tusonga mbele mama Afrika.
We have 15 minutes. 15 minutes.
This growth, and we need to make it work. How many representatives do the youth have in the government structures? And then how many in each structure? We need a space where youth parliamentarians can work together, cooperate, collaborate, learn from each other.
How do we make democracy work? One of the challenges and misconceptions I've had is that development is a product of democracy. How do you make your representation qualitative more than it is quantitative? Because what we don't have in Africa is not a problem of numbers, but what we now need is how to translate that bulk, that number, into the force of development for Africa. I want to say very clearly that the stories of our future, the success of our future, should be the success of the ease of our current leaders as young people.
And I think as an African youth, we should really speak about quantity and qualities, because we are advocating for more people to come to the politics with the big numbers, and we have no agenda to achieve.
I volunteered for a political party when I was in my first year at the university, and I took evening classes. So during the day, I'd work for a political party the whole day. Society doesn't believe that a young person is a leader yet. We look at young people as lesser leaders. Even when they hold positions, we feel that their mistakes cannot be made publicly and they need to be whipped.
I am one of those people who believe that the current political formations in Kenya do not represent the aspirations of the Kenyan people. And I'm vying as an independent candidate for the Senate seat in Vihiga County. And I believe the Kenyan voter is also looking for a middle ground.
I am running for office to offer the alternative that we've always pointed out from the other side in the same leadership. Because if we don't do this, we will continue complaining and offering no solution. And as young people, we are reminded to add value.
The more the politics of East Africa and of Africa takes a youthful face in the output, the more it is important for us to ensure that there's an accountability mechanism for being a young leader.
And if you see South Sudan peace in implementing now, the youth have played a big role to convene their constituency, where the population of the constituency, 70% of our population in South Sudan are youth.
Our commitment is that we will follow this to the dot. And we believe that there is nothing for the youth without the youth. So let's push this agenda together, especially the integration of East Africa.
As East African integration widens and deepens, there's a growing need to bring you young people together so that you speak with the present and the future leaders. I encourage you to make use of the knowledge obtained in this forum to advocate for the space in shaping development agenda in your respective countries and at the regional level. I also encourage you to work on what we discuss in this forum and put them to action.
The YouthLead Summit was a complete package. Politics, we talked about business, we talked about gender, we talked about the critical role of young people, not only in Africa, but actually marketing ourselves to the global market. So that's really key. And also our critical role as young people in building peace.
Ivan, as the head of the Leadership and Governance Academy at TCBC and as the YouLead Program Director, you are also offering leadership for this Youth Governance Architecture study. We'd like to find out from you why the study is important, not just for TCBC, but for the region.
First of all, the study addresses the evidence gap that exists on youth programming. There is a lot that many players are trying to do for the young people and with the young people, but we need to update the status of affairs of the young people. What do the young people want to see more in their space, and what areas do they need support more? And so this research is an effort to collect data, evidence, to inform what the young people really aspire for, and for players like government, society, and environment partners to program on the basis of such evidence in order to be responsive to the current needs of the young people in the region.
I believe that we are still trapped into a narrative seeing young people as this homogeneous group, without realizing that there is a massive difference of circumstances from 18 to 35, and then all these socioeconomic circumstances. But then when we take a step back and think of young women, we know that patriarchy negatively affects their participation at private and public life. As such, when we want to investigate to which extent the environment is enabling youth participation, we need also to focus specifically on young women participation. Young women participation is this big, different group. Let's take, for example, young women with disabilities. Which type and form of disabilities? What type of socio-economic challenges and circumstances affect them? What's their level of education? And many other aspects from rural to urban, and also the way the digital divide affects them. Starting from this kind of analysis, we have then realized that it was extremely important not just to investigate youth participation, but even more, young women participation from an inclusive perspective, which means that we have focused as well on young people with disabilities.
The research addresses the programming needs of a cluster and set of players. Begin with the youth themselves. They need a space and a process through which they can express their own needs, aspirations, and what they want to see working on, and whoever wants to support them, where they should put the support. to government policymakers at all levels, from national youth councils to members of parliament that represent young people, but also policymakers in the institutions of government, such as national youth councils and ministries responsible for taking care of the needs of the young people. And lastly, the development partners who are supporting government efforts and also in some way supporting young people's efforts. They need to know through this research for the next 3, 4 years, 5 years, what should we prioritize in order to be in solidarity with the young people and address their identified needs.
Conducting such a study, which basis is indeed inclusivity, was not easy, because inevitably we know that the 6 countries of our consideration, but more generally the continent, is affected by an evident digital divide, which means that conducting and trying an outreach to the most vulnerable was not easy. We tried with the expedient of having a cross-sectoral investigation through focus groups in each country of our interest. And although it was very interesting of having the engagement with different stakeholders, yet it was a little bit challenging in terms of investigating, collaborating, exchanging with, for example, young people with disabilities, but also different young women groups.
So with the existing frameworks for youth participation in leadership and contribution to the governance of this continent, what is this unique thing you should be looking forward to from this study?
The frameworks are in place, guiding what young people are, who they are, what their needs are, and what governments and other players could do to address these needs. But the frameworks lack a life. Therefore, this study goes a step further. It studies the voices, the needs, and the practice on how young people are being engaged, and addresses the gap of the distance between the frameworks and the needs of young people. If you like, this study moves the frameworks from policies to results, and this is the addition or the value add that the study brings to the very many wonderful frameworks that already exist at national level, regional level, and continental level.
Tusonga mbele mama Afrika, Afrika, Tusonga mbele mama Afrika, Afrika,
Around young people very often associate them with violence, treating them more as a threat than anything else. In securitized responses to young people, hard security approaches that make young people more frightened of their governments than anyone else, and this is completely counterproductive.
Peace education strives to create understanding and a common ground on strategies that benefit groups, individuals that are in conflict.
The children of today, they are the leaders of the 2063, but the young people of today, they are leaders of today.
Be mindful of what we do, especially for the digital hygiene part. It's really, really, really important.
Because most of the time when we look at the victims or people who are affected, we look at them as in form of numbers. We don't look at the potentials that they can bring into the conversation. And I think it is very important that not only the youth that have been victims, but every youth need to be meaningfully engaged, as well as also recognize what they can do and for them to be appreciated for what they have done.
Socio-economic integration in East Africa, it can only succeed if peace, stability, and security are established in the region. Article 124 of the treaty establishing the East African Community is very clear on issues of security, but also the strategies that we take to ensure our people move across the borders in East Africa with a lot of peace.
The need to change the narrative that young people are essentially perpetrators of violence and victims act of violence.
Article 120 of the treaty calls on partner states to develop a common approach towards marginalized groups, including children and young people, PAC integrations, without getting the youth involved. Long live the East African community. Long live the young leaders. May God bless you all. Thank you for your kind attention.
We need this fellowship so that we can acquire right knowledge and skill that will enable us to take active roles in decision-making processes.
We, as the East African community, need to be educated on different cultures on different countries. So can the YouLead Summit provide a platform like Expo? You know, like it's like an Expo where each country has a booth that give information about their country, the language they speak, the cultures. They can even bring products from their own countries.
Ideally, we leave it to the creativity of the countries to determine what they're going to bring here in the form of cultural exchange. We have never prescribed.
We need to conduct consultative meetings with different stakeholders. We have the MPs, the members of parliament, the government. We even have to use these religious leaders, even the media, by the way. It should be part and parcel peace building of our different nations. And the next recommendation is there is the need to conduct trainings on post-conflict reconciliation and stabilization. As youth, we need that information because remember, knowledge is power.
Africa, tusonga mbele mama Afrika, Afrika,
Kopamo Africa. Mulitani bonse. Yahe, bonjour.
tusonga mbele mama Afrika, Afrika,
His word, he says, and I quote, problem is what? Is inevitable. However, we must be the solution, the inevitable solution to the inevitable problem.
Diego Twahirwa, you can even call him Chiri Man, the man who is doing chiri, who is exporting chiri. Looking at chiri, accommodate more youth. When we had a bilateral discussion, your problem is supply. The market you have, but the problem is supply. These people that are here, young entrepreneurs, how can we involve them to help you in supply chain?
The big question or the issue that we have is getting the sustainable and reliable market. And we are lucky to have a big demand and sustainable market for them. So with the CFTA, that means like we are open. It's not only, I'm not going only to consider Rwanda as a source of the production or supply. It's open for everyone. Like I was lucky to get a big demand to supply chili to China. And when I signed the contract, everyone said like, how are you going to be able to meet this commitment you're signing? But for me, because I was exposed enough and I know how the order for India or China, it was nothing. and the way they consider Africa as one country is that I was looking at that framework where I said, now, this order is not only for me, it's not only for Rwanda, it's for Africa. And now with this CFTA program, it's going to ease the transaction and also even the move of people, like for the skills sharing. And for me, I had started this on my own, where I was expanding to DRC, to Zimbabwe. Now, with this framework, it's going to accommodate more young youth across Africa.
We need to upload our products there. I need to sit in Ghana and upload this there. And somebody needs to sit in Gabon and be able to buy from us, okay? So your assignment, number one, to talk to Jumia and find out why can't African companies post there. Number two, we've mentioned that everybody's doing business on Instagram, on Facebook. Instagram has something called Instagram Shop, where anybody can sell on, but it's not available in Africa. Why? Why can't African businesses use Instagram Shop? So you guys here, write to Instagram and make sure that by the time we are coming for the next summit, all businesses are able to upload on Instagram Shop, and we are able to make payments through Instagram Shop and buy through Instagram Shop. Number three, do you know Elsa Majimbo? Yes, she was making funny videos on Instagram. Now she's modeling for all the big brands, okay? There's a model in the village who does not have access to internet, and we've talked about it right now, who if they had that access to internet, first of all, they could have skills. We're talking about skills here, skills here, skills here. All you need to do is go on YouTube, and after is not going to wait for us. It's just a document. It's just a document. So we have to make it come alive. And so you have 4 assignments. After is not going to wait for us. It's just a document. It's just a document. So we have to make it come alive. And so you have 4 assignments. Please go and represent us.
We stand at a better position to benefit, to support the benefits and the opportunities of the FCFTA that we are talking about. So now we want to reiterate what the minister from Rwanda mentioned, that it is true. His Excellency Wamkele Mene, the Secretary General of the FCFTA, his priority is to ensure that the young people are driving this FCFTA. So we are putting quite a number of strategies at the FCFTA to ensure that the youth are involved not only in the negotiations, but as well as in the implementation.
As I mentioned, the CFTA is a game changer, but to be a game changer, they need to streamline the trade information. That's very critical. And I know in the pillar it has that, but it needs to trickle down to SMEs. The information needs to trickle down to the youth, to the women.
Africa, Africa. Tusonga mbele mama Afrika, Afrika, Tusonga mbele mama Afrika, Afrika,
What can we do to reduce unemployment? Can we be job creators rather than just job seekers?
The only business you can go into, whether you are a public figure, or public official, or otherwise, and nobody will praise you or probe you, is agriculture.
This is where the ideas of young people can begin snowballing.
We need to get into technological innovation. Since 2021, investors have thrown $940 million into technology companies in Africa. So technology is the way to go.
It is important that whatever is done at policy level is disseminated to the users or to the beneficiaries.
What is your ideal Africa that you wish to have?
Africa which supports the youth, because the youth are the innovative and they can move Africa.
An Africa driven by business, trade and investment.
It's a united Africa, one Africa by Africans and for Africans.
I want the FCFTA to be for the young people and driven by the young people.
Buy East Africa, build East Africa. That is the brand we need to put across. That is the song we should be singing as youth.
Mine it is Africa that is borderless.
I think it's important to
start to aim low, to build your business, to have some experience, and then be confident enough to go beyond, from your village to the next town, to the region.
East Africa is a home of close to almost 200 million people. And if you are to go and design a product, one product, however small it is, you'll be assured of 200 million people. If you are selling that product for $1, yeah, and you are able to get that market, that's the money you'll be able to make. You can make Africa the factory of the world. It is possible.
It is a great privilege to be part of this important youth event, and allow me to express his deepest appreciation to you. He's so proud of you, of what you're doing, particularly YouLead and the youth present there, but also at the continental level. As we continue to nurture the young people, the young generation, we must acknowledge that they need key technical skills to become more competitive in the process of realizing the African Continental Free Trade Area, and also to encounter various challenges related to financing and ease of movement.
I like the idea of having a forum where people from all walks of life and from the various social, economic, and political backgrounds sitting together under one roof to discuss issues of common interest. The Arusha debate will seek to discuss and highlight pressing African issues which would require regional, continental, and global policy attention and action. This kind of focus of the Arusha debate is something I wholeheartedly welcome and support. A successful Arusha debate will add another significant milestone to the Arusha brand. Ladies and gentlemen, let me say that I have no doubt in my mind that you'll be able to deliver the Arusha debates as a world-class undertaking. If they could do it with Davos, we can also do it with Arusha. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, after those many words, it is now my singular honor and pleasure to declare the inaugural Arusha debates officially open. Best of luck.
Africa, Africa, eh, eh.
This is not the reality. We have also young people in vulnerable settings. We have young people with disabilities, and we have foremost young women.
But again, a population that is ill-skilled and unemployed can be a demographic curse. So this is the challenge, but the opportunity is in us trying to convert this demographic dividend into opportunity.
But also young people as
Time up, let us regroup.
They are our biggest asset.
No,
Because
time up.
The richness of nations is not in stones, but in its people.
It's never been more important to develop our
Madam Chair, gender equality. Madam Chair, gender equality. Madam Chair, gender equality. Time up.
Africa's youth are faced with growing concerns about how to flourish.
Chairman, Peace and Security. Time up.
Founded in 2017, we are Africa's flagship youth leadership program.
Chairman, Business. Chairman, Business.
There are many challenges facing young people on
Chairman, Business. Time up.
One of them is that each and every one of the young people in Africa have the desire to become a leader. I think investment should be made more to build the capacity of young people in Africa to become effective leaders.
Under globalization, the world is small. The whole world out there has skills. We need to equip our youth with requisite skills so that they participate properly, even in global interaction.
And this means that we need to do more to create economic opportunities and work opportunities for young people.
YouLead for me represents that opportunity for young people to, first of all, think about their problems collectively, and then develop, if it be disruptive strategies to take action on addressing those challenges.
The summit is not just a 3 days or 4 or 5 days event for young people to come and chit chat and go home. Whatever they are saying is influencing our 1-year work, what we call the post-summit agenda.
With now more than 10,000 alumni and over 30 partners, and active partner-led work in all 5 major African regions, a one young Africa is our vision.
We have a great vision. We're envisioning 150 delegates in person, 20,000 virtually, but this is not to me the only success indicator. The success indicator is ensuring that all these 20,000 young people virtually provide inputs and meaningfully engage throughout the conversation, and all their suggestions are then incorporated into our post-summit agenda.
Look at 2017, just East Africa coming together, and now thousands of African young people.
YouLead Summit 2021. We are proud to announce that we are going continental, coming together as a one young Africa.
And we want actually to break the borders. The CFTA is here. We want African young people to come together under YouLead Summit platform, trade together across the borders, innovate together across the borders, and create jobs as well as prosper together.
That's what drove us to become, one young Africa. We have the potential and the capacity to do so.
From 8 to 12 November 2021, we are hosting
Madam Chair, gender equality, you're completely out of order.
His Excellency Jakaya
Chairman,
Kikwete,
Peace and Security.
Tanzania as Chief Convener.
Chairman Wani, you're completely out of order.
EAC Secretary General as co-convener. The theme is
Regroup.
The Future of Africa, creating jobs,
Regroup.
and housing the world's youngest continent.
I call upon policymakers, development partners, the private sector, media, civil society, and other stakeholders to be part of and support the East African community in convening this year's YouLead Summit.
We will attract participation from all the partner states of the EAC and indeed the continent. I thank you. Asanteni sana. See you in Arusha. Jenge vijana wetu.
Since 2017, YouLead Summit, as popularly known, is jointly convened annually by the East African Community and MS Training Center for Development Cooperation in Arusha, Tanzania, in collaboration with a myriad of partners.
COVID-19 is both a blessing and a curse, equally.
We have seen how the COVID pandemic has hit very hard young people.
Guys, let's move quickly for the sake of time.
We'll bring together more than 15,000 people on a single platform because travel is restricted, but more people come together through the internet, courtesy of COVID-19.
We are welcoming a metro and physical audience from all African countries together on the same platform.
Nonetheless, COVID-19 has reduced the opportunities for young people. Young people have lost jobs, and COVID-19 pushes us beyond the boundary to innovate and create jobs that we have lost using COVID-friendly mechanisms such as online platforms, as well as increased cooperation between and among young people across the borders, especially under the CFTA, which regards that trade should happen beyond borders of any country.
One young Africa.
YouLead Summit 2019 is the Africa that we want.
And I really appreciate YouLead Summit for giving us a platform on how we can build a collective power to create a sustainable movement that will help us create change in our society.
So I'm very, very happy to participate in YouLead Summit.
Madam Chair, Politics, are you ready?
Summit is really awesome.
Madam Chair, Politics, are you ready?
Is empowering.
YouLead Africa, a one young Africa where dreams are born and youth become leaders.
DJ, if I could get the other microphone. DJ, if I could get the other microphone. Madam Chair, Politics. Can somebody please tell Madam Chair, Politics that I'm calling her? Madam Chair, Politics, you're holding everyone hostage, please. We need to do presentations. You're holding everyone hostage. Meanwhile, the business team, I hope you have your chair ready. Chair business, are you ready for presentation? Chairman Wani, are you ready for presentation? Are you? Madam Chair, Gender Equality, are you ready for presentation? Are you ready for presentation?
Vijana wa Afrika wote waungana, vijana vijana kutoka mashariki, magharibi,
Thank you, DJ.
hata na kati.
Thank you, DJ. Madam Chair, Politics, please take the floor. Can someone ask the people who are standing in the fringes there to come and join the group?
I'm going to present, but that's what I'm saying. Just give us a minute as we don't have a minute because there was one right in the minute.
You can begin with that approach, then simple things.
You've attended our meeting and you know how it was so political. And you can't go to the region without the benefit of the political and political and you're really making it less difficult.
And that's why people begin with gender.
If I begin with anything, it will be you understand what I mean? You will not be looking for that. And then when you go to the rest, again, the problem you have in politics is transferred to another thing.
Okay, then call other chairpersons to come here.
Because they are also working on
They're
not working, they're ready. They're the ones who are doing it.
So automatically we must be the first one.
I would like to send an business.
So automatically we must be the first one.
Yes. Are you the ones who are saying politics is the most important?
It's the most.
That is why we normally put it on the one.
Okay. Then they can co-present. Can that be possible? You can co-present. You give a point and then yes, yeah, yeah. You can co-present. Yeah.
I don't want long explanations. I want to be because I said they're not long. I said we only have three issues. We only have three. I said I want to talk about what people do not.
Okay. Hello. Hello. Good afternoon. Is it a good afternoon? I would like all of us to listen attentively because if there's anything they have left out, I would want to get feedback on the same from the group so that we can add it as the conversation proceeds. I'm Dora, and I've been chairing the political group that was highly political. Kindly clap for yourselves. And I must tell you, it's not easy to work with politicians. Everyone was right at some point. And what happened in my group, I'm going to read the minutes. Excuse me, with me. Steve, please. We first raised an issue of the youth representation, and someone raised an issue that the special interest groups, that is the youth, the disabled, and the elderly and women, are not represented in Yala. And one of the discussions that happened was that young people are being nominated across all levels of leadership. That is one observation that we made, that political parties nominate names that go to parliament, and parliament votes in that specific country, and the names are presented to Yala. So they said that already the law is there and it can't be worked on. And then towards the end of the meeting, someone raised another issue of how we have old persons representing the youth and claim to be the youth representatives. An example, we have ministers who are 40 years, 50 years. We have representatives in Yala who are 50 years but representing the youth, something like that. So they wanted this assembly to push that if we have different spaces for the youth, that is the minister for the youth in that specific country, let them be over youthful age. Have you gotten me, please? Let's say if the Constitution of Uganda states that a youth has to be 18 to 35, let the youth minister fall in that age. Thank you. And then we also had an issue of the clearance at the border points, and someone raised that issue, how some states in East Africa find it so difficult to access the others. And we raised an example of Burundi, DRC, where they pay lots of money for the visa to go to a certain country in East Africa, and also how some people don't necessarily have to use their national IDs to go to a specific country in East Africa, like how Ugandans go to access Tanzania. And they wanted they wanted visas to be eliminated for DRC, and then to also have a common paper that can help people in East Africa move freely at border points. We had the issue of the single currency, and that meeting observed that the policies are there in Yala, but they're not being implemented. So they wanted to push to see that these issues are being implemented, like the one for the currency, so that we have a common currency as East Africa. Then We also had different actors to work on all this, and our first actors were the youth to come up and make a voice for themselves, to push for themselves. Then the other actors that we have are the Yala parliamentarians, the East African Council, the Council of Ministers, and ambassadors, the CSOs. Yes, thank you very much. And then, as I conclude, the other issue that we have the Speaker of East Africa. We had the Speaker of East Africa in our group, and we had a very good issue that we shall leave on this floor for you to discuss about how we wanted to have a youth council for East Africa, and that youth council elects representatives, let's say ministers, to go to Yala and specifically represent the youth. But you get my point? To be voted for by the youth, not the member states. Thank you very much. And if there is any issue that you would love for us to add on all these, we shall be very happy to add them.
Before we make additions, I think I had visited the group on politics and said that we have to be very realistic about the proposals we're making for the coming 1 year. And if there's anything that is going to go beyond 1 year, then you propose it as a long-term plan. This last issue that you have put up to the floor may actually stoke discussions here that unfortunately will not bear fruit here. The proposal on what should be in the framework for the East Africa Community Youth Council cannot be discussed here. It would have to be discussed by a smaller committee. The proposal on how people get to Yala needs to be a question of an amendment or a review of the laws, and therefore the activity you should have put on your action plan is an activity recommending that you're going to review the laws on how people get into Yala.
Actually, the literature that we used was that we make an amendment on the law that we have a seat for the youth in Yala.
So in terms of action planning language, is there anybody who's sitting here who's in Yala? Just like I thought. So you can't say you're going to make an amendment. You do not have access to making the amendment. So you'll say advocate for the amendment of the rules and procedures for nomination of members to Yala.
Okay.
All right? So that we sharpen your action plan and it has recommendations that can actually be followed up by somebody. If not Yala itself, at least by somebody outside the Yala, whether it's the Youth Parliament or some other platform to follow up. But can I have those two gentlemen who are lifting up their hands to give their feedback quickly? Keep it short and concise. Could I have someone to help me move the microphone around? Thanks. Thanks, Becky.
Thank you. I want some clarification here. Is there a topic centered on East Africa or Africa?
That's an important question. That's a very important question. We have been reminded consistently in the last 3 days that we are very selfish. We're focusing the discussions on East Africa only. Part of the struggle with the political group is that they knew a lot and they did not want to hear the guidance being offered. But this group was also supposed to discuss proposals for the AU, the proposals for Africa. So if you have any recommendation that you want them to add, this would be a good time to add.
Yes, thank you very much. If you are talking about the Ministry of Youth, appointing a youth to the Ministry of Youth, I think that most of the countries in Africa, the youth ministry does not stand alone. For instance, in the case of Ghana, it's youth and sports. So we should advocate that every member state should have a standing ministry of youth and sports, but not to combine it with another ministry. That is where now you can further advocate for a youth being a minister.
To be an independent body.
Not an independent body. but it should stand alone.
Stand
Like
alone, the Ministry for the
Ministry
Youth.
of Youth.
Yes, thank you.
You get it? And the oversight responsibility should be a youth. But immediately it's attached to, another ministry is attached to it, then it will look incongruous to bring in a youth there.
Thank you.
Yeah.
The other question I have for you before you hand over the microphone is who is going to execute that? And the reason why I'm asking you this question is because we all still have sovereignty. Governments have the responsibility to appoint cabinets.
Exactly.
So where do you expect this
yes, we
decision
have,
to be made?
We have civil society organizations that can advocate for the separation of such ministries.
So that is the proposal you're making, that
Exactly.
civil society organizations should advocate
exactly
for the establishment of independent departments for youth or ministries of youth.
Exactly.
Okay. Your timeline?
Oh, my timeline is just 1 year.
Okay. Oh, I see ambition here. Where is the next person? There's another gentleman whose hand was up there.
Hi, thank you very much. I thought it was a very good presentation. I think something that we could add as well is that, all countries, all member states should have like a national youth council. Something I've realized is that, Tanzania doesn't have a national youth council. And if you don't have that sort of structure entrenched, then how do you get proper youth representation at higher levels? So I think it's important that all member states have a national youth council where the young people themselves can vote for who they want to, who they want to represent them.
Thank you. You're making this recommendation to who?
The political group.
Not the political group. This is now the plenary.
Okay. I'd say all the ministries of youth and sports, like my Ghanaian brother said, they should devolve it. So the way we do it in the UK is that the power is devolved to a group called the British Youth Council, which is an NGO, and that sort of delivers on the affairs of like youth councils across the country. So you could have it in the sense that it's owned by the Ministry of Youth and Sports. However, it will be NGOs that will be actually, following out the procedures of having.
So you're asking national governments to set up national youth councils?
Yes.
In all the countries in Africa. Thank you. Timeline?
It only really takes about a year or 2 years. It's very quick.
Depending on political will. And there's a hand in front here.
Thank you so much. I'm by the name of Katobathias from Uganda. I want to supplement on the political group, though I was in a business group because I'm a politician and a businessman. So on the issue of Uyara, I think you cannot develop a house and start direct from the roof. If we can advocate within 1 year for our regions to surely make sure that there is a youth platform on the regional basis, then from the regional basis, we can go to Africa, where we have the African Youth Charter. These 42 countries that signed for that charter, they really implement that. We can surely, in 1 year, because we see that the youth, we are the majority, and our voice can be heard.
What are you saying, therefore, we should do?
Oh, I'm saying, as you lead, we should advocate for the regional youth councils.
That point has already been taken.
Yes, where I was trying to rectify more, there is a question that came in trying to say we should discuss on Africa, but not regional. Thank you so much.
I don't think you understood the question. The question was, were we planning for East Africa only or for the entire continent? So the answer was that we were supposed to be planning for every country that is represented here in our conversations.
Yes, that's where, Madam, I came clear by saying regionals can also be considered, then we come with Africa. Thank you.
Okay. Another hand that I've missed? Anyone with an addition to the political recommendations? Rebecca, there's a hand. Yeah, there.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Spila from South Africa. What I think we need to consider as we advocate for these different groups, we have not discussed the executive powers that they should have. I think as the youth of Africa, we've had enough of advisory boards and, youth bodies that have no actual executive powers to implement anything, but all they do is give recommendations, and there's no actual strategy on oversight, implementation, or key point indicators to actually measure progress as it gets implemented. So as we consider this, let us start considering what executive powers do we want the structures to have. Thank you.
Duro, wherever you are, amend the recommendation on the establishment of a regional council to say establishment of regional youth councils with executive power. Another hand? Good. Let's give a clap to the group on business. Sorry, to the group on politics. Chair business. Chair business.
Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone. So thank you very much for my team. I'll go straight to the suggestions that were given. The approach we have used is more on the action and then the partners and the kind of strategies that we're going to be using, and then action plan. So the first thing that we have to, we realized is that we have a challenge on regulations. So we agreed to come up with specific regulations on first, registration of businesses and startups within different countries so that we can understand how we're going to be trading around those countries as well. But the most important thing is having a startup act. So on the startup act, what we have agreed is that each country has to introduce a startup act, and then we're going to have regional startup acts, and then from there we can have one African startup act. So we'll be learning from what countries are doing, and then from those countries we can be able to develop one for the region, according to, let's say, EAC, SADC, and all that. And then from there, we can have one for Africa. The partners that we're looking at, or at least, let's say, the examples that we can use, we have mentioned a couple of countries here. We have Kenya, that I believe they have a bill on Startup Act. We can use that to learn how is it going. And then there was a little bit of confusion for part of Uganda. So I think we'll have representative from Uganda to really know exactly if they have a Startup Act or if they're developing one, so that we know how we're going to learn from that. Tanzania, we're working on one. So once it's launched, also we'll be part of it. Burkina Faso, they have one already, so we can use that as an example. But also we have AFCFTA, Trade Customs. They have also some of the acts that we can use to see how we're going to implement that. We have also EAC Trade Chamber of Commerce, and also AYL, the AU Trade, the AU Trade Chambers Charter, sorry. So these are the organs that we'll be working with to make sure that we are coming up with a Startup Act. And the action plan is that we would like YouLead to help us to organize the committee that will be working on making sure that we get all these acts reviewed and see how we're going to be able to develop them and then start implementing or having a Startup Act. In terms of timeline, it has been a little bit tricky to make a decision on this. It's something that we have to discuss because most of the countries are having their own internal discussions on this. So we have to really understand what is happening within their countries, and then it's when we can come up with a specific timeline for this. But what we're going to do, we'll give ourselves a quarter, 3 months, to understand each country, what they're doing specifically for the Startup Act, so that we know the status, and then we know how we're moving forward from there. That was the first point. The second point is having a portal that will have all the details in terms of how startup can start businesses and operations in each country. So by this portal, we mean that having one portal that when startups want to do a business or want to expand to another country, they can go there and try to learn how other countries are registering. This portal will help us to have all the documentations, all the informations, and understanding the regulations from different countries, and then be able to know when they're able to expand and understanding all the information that are needed. Now, when it comes to portal, we believe that YouLead can help us to decide how we're going to create this portal. That's an action plan. And it's something that I think it has to be discussed internally, how who is going to host this portal and everything, so that we can be able to know how it will be regulated and how it's going to be working. The example of the portal that has been given is from Kenya. It's called eCitizen, as an example of something that can be checked and see how it works. And then from there, we can adapt something that can be used as well. Number 3 is harmonizing African standard certification. So for this one is that we just believed that we have an issue of standardization for the startups in our products. So we have to have one we have to harmonize for African standardization for our startups and businesses, so that we know how we're going to be operating and how our products will be standardized. And the parties that we're looking to work with are ministries, so that we can understand from each country how they're working on the standardization of the products, as well as for the startups, how they're working in their countries. But we're also going to work with national chambers of commerce from each countries, the steering committee for startups. So we believe that each country has the steering committee that is supporting startups. For example, in Tanzania, we have TSA, the Tanzania Startup Association, whereby we can discuss all the challenges and issues that are concerning startups. We need to have negotiators from each country, so that we can be able to negotiate about the needs of the startups and how they can be supported. And also, this has been separated from the ministries, is to be more specific on the Ministry of Finance. And the timeline that we have set for this is at least 4 months, so that we can have a specific action plan to understand where are we going and have the progress of how this is going to be implemented. Number 3 is policies translation. So the policies translation, we have divided into 2. One is language-based, and the second one is how we're delivering the messages about those policies. Some of the policies are clear because of the languages, but they cannot be interpreted by those that we are creating policies for. So we have to translate those policies to startups, so that, or let's say business in general as well, so that they can be able to implement them. And one of the strategy that one of the partners that we think we can work with is the government's bodies, specifically the Ministry of Trade, whereby they'll help us to translate all the acts according to the type of language they're using within certain region or country, and also using social influencers who are into business to be able to explain. And to add up more, I think we have to use a lot of medias that are concerning with trade and business issues, so that they can always deliver the message perfectly. The timeline is ongoing. So we'll have progress reports each 3 months to understand how many acts have been, how many policies have been translated, how are they implemented, how are they used, and then see how they can be implemented. And among the partners that we are thinking to use, because also we talked of marginalized groups, is Leverage Online, who they're ready to help us to translate for the deaf and see how we can be able to include them on the part of the policies. The point number 4 is digital inclusion. Now, on the digital inclusion, it's quite big, and it gave us a little bit of challenge to discuss more. But if I could give examples, we are talking about the part that we focus more on the social medias, because they've been giving a lot of opportunities to young people and different startups and businesses. But also, I think one of my sisters asked her to raise her hand to clarify more. So I'll leave this to her to be able to clarify later. And on the digital access, we're thinking of having specific activities within the summits that we'll be having, or having like different cohorts of activities on training on how to leverage on the digital access and also digital inclusion as well. And then at the end, during the summit, we could have specific people that are participating on the digital inclusion to come and share with us specific experiences on how this works, so that we can have something that is practical and more specific on what we're going to be doing. So these people are the ones that are involved in the digital inclusion, and they can come and share with us something that is tangible that we can be able to use and implement as well. In terms of timeline, that will be cohort-based, and according to be on how it's going to be implemented. And then during the summits, we're going to be reviewing on how these have been implemented and have been done as well. In case I forgot, I have my guys, they're going to help me to add up on that. I'm just finishing actually. And then, so we have programs on incubation. These incubations are there to train our startups and all that. So we feel like we're not leveraging enough on AFCFTA. So we are thinking that all the programs that are doing the incubation programs, they have to include the AFCFTA on their program so that we know how to leverage specifically on this opportunity that we have. So that one, it has to do with the specific programs and hubs that are implementing it. Also, like we have to include Chamber of Commerce, getting familiar with ICT tools, translation, so everything to be translated AFCFTA related so that youth and startups know exactly what we're going to do on that area. And lastly is having reports on specific programs and activities that we'll be introducing related to business. So for example, we have programs like Ikoyaka, we have programs like the new one that has been introduced, the African Youth Business Council. So once we introduce these programs, because they have activities they have to do, we need to see progress reports so that we see how we're moving forward. And we are suggesting that each 3 months to see the progress, and then at the end of the year during the summit to understand where we have been and how are we moving forward in terms of the policies and activities that they have been doing. Lastly is on research. So this is general. We don't want to start implementing things just from nowhere. So we are suggesting that in every business-related activity, we do research, and then we base on activities based on those research that we're going to be doing in every activity. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that. I just have two pieces of feedback for you. You said harmonization of standards and certification. Is there anyone from the business group who has power to harmonize, harmonize and standardize certification? Is there anyone from the business group who has, actually not from the business group, from this entire group, is there anyone who has power here to harmonize? My question is there anyone who has power? I want to hear a clear answer. No. So if you don't have power in your action plan, you don't say you be this agency, whichever agency is responsible for taking action to harmonize and standardize certification and all those things, okay? So once you frame it like that, then you're saying as an actor, what you'll be doing is advocating. But the people you'll collaborate with, you now mentioned ministries, regional regulation bodies, the East Africa Business Community, Western Africa Business, whatever council, like that. Am I clear? Then I noticed that this group, first of all, congratulations on a very good job, very well done. I think you are very focused on key issues and you are able to make concrete proposals on things that can be done. What I have seen you failing to do is that you're afraid to mention timelines. Unfortunately, every time you wait for nation states to make decisions, they take their time. So you create regional standards for timelines that they must fit into. So please go back to your timelines, sit with your rapporteur, tie up that nicely, and then bring us that beautiful document that you have developed. All right? A clap for business. Anyone who has any addition they want to make to business, a proposal that on something, then Becky, please help me. 1, 2, 3, 4.
First, sorry. This is okay. Thank you very much, Masawi Ivan from Uganda. You even had the question about Uganda on policy regarding startup and incubation hubs. I think Uganda has one of the best policies because it even has programs implementing startups and incubation hubs in Uganda. As I appreciate you for the fact that you have clearly brought out the issue, one of our biggest challenges as youth today is not doing things on paper, but funding them. Because even the procedure you've really clearly conceptualized down on paper shows that it also needs funding. So you need to address the procedure funding of whatever plans you have because that makes it more justifiable. Thank you.
Allow me to stop you right there. We develop action plans so that we can fundraise alongside action plans. So this document is actually a fundraising tool. So we hopefully are going to get funding for these recommendations, collaborating with each other.
Can I add on that?
Thank you. Pempo from Malawi. On your suggestion on harmonization of standards, this was, it caught my attention because it's something I've proposed before. So I did a little research on it. Actually, it's part of the Abuja Treaty. The member states had actually already signed to come up with a framework for one standard, one market policy. And last year, the organization, African Standards Organization, ARSO, has been in engagements with AU and AFCFTA to try and come up with a framework for the harmonization. So I would say the framework is already there. So maybe my suggestion would be for your group to try and engage the AU and AFCFTA and our respective governments to try and find out how far they're going with this and to demand they at least update us on what's happening. Thank you.
Thank you, Kawalewale. We are not just going to be asking for an update, we are going to be advocating for the finalization of the framework and pushing for its implementation across the continent. This is why I told you when you make any proposals on frameworks or policies or regulations that are done in the region, do your research and find out the status of the activity. There was someone, yes, the lady.
Okay, I'm Sia from Tanzania. From your point of view, I'd like to add, please may it be public document. Everything that we discuss here may be in documentation that the next YouLead people can know where did we start, where we going, what was not happening, what was done, so people can know. If you are not in the government or you're not in implementing NGOs, you don't get that information or documentation.
What is your definition of public?
I mean, in terms of the policies, in terms of the what we're discussing, for what we're pushing for.
No, when you say public, where should these documents be placed for it to be public enough?
Even in YouLead website, you cannot find what was done the last time in terms of all these policies which we're discussing. So if a person wants, for example, in business, you're a person who wants to start a business, right? All this information, if you did not attend something like this, you cannot get all this information. So I'm trying to may we bridge the information gap in terms if it is politics, if it is business, if it is environment, if it is gender. May we bridge that information gap, please?
Thank you very much for that proposal. I hear you about making all the documents public. For YouLead, all our documents, all are on our websites. But you're also saying that we need to bridge the information gap for startups and for youth businesses so that if they need to start a business, they will find information. If they need to get any business support, they'll find information. And I think you heard from the business group that they're talking about the setting up of a portal, you called it, where all that information will, a one-stop portal where all the information will be found in one place. So hopefully that will be the solution. Until then, what YouLead can do is to help provide a list of platforms where you can get that information, but you'll have to take the responsibility yourself to go to those platforms. Do you hear me? Yeah, because the different agencies normally provide the information on their own websites, on their social media platforms. So we can just provide a list while we work towards this portal where all the information will be found in one place. Hopefully we succeed to convince maybe CFTA to host it all in one place. Number 4 was who? It was you?
Yeah. Good afternoon. My name is Amata. I'm from Kenya. I'm a media and entertainment lawyer. I am the sister that he referred to that would expound on the future of work in the digital space. I will start by saying that we have to give it to the youth that it is them who are taking up most work in the digital space through cryptocurrency, blockchains, and NFTs. They're the ones, it's the youth who have that knowledge. I would also, I would also recommend the East Africa Business Council to look at things like remote work, because you can look up remote work, which you can do, but which you yourself you have the capacity to do, but you can't do because you're not in the region which allows you to do that job. For example, transcriptionists and also I was also looking at virtual assistants. Virtual assistants is 6 months in Africa, but it is a very rewarding job because a virtual assistant is paid $30 to $60 an hour. And for example, you have one client and you work for them for 12 hours in a week. So using $30, so that's $30 times 12 for the week, that is $360 a week. And of course, you work, of course, for a month. So in a month, it and $40. And how I have seen my friends in Kenya do it, they work with 3, 4, and I have someone who works $1,440 times 3, 4, and 5. That is your earning potential. The other job I'd also like ESC to look at is Netflix taggers. A Netflix tagger's role is to sit somewhere. Of course, it's an 8 to 5 job in the Western world. They sit somewhere and watch movies or binge watch on shows and series, and then they place them in the right categories. Netflix tagging job, to the least someone is paid a month is $3,000. But as Kenyans, when we tried to apply, we were told that the job is not available for our region. So could the ESC, could the East Africa Business Council as well as East African Business Council look into ways in which members from the ESC partner states can benefit from this first when it comes to Africa? Then my last point, I had something to add to the Business Council, if you please allow me. I was recommending, there's a certain tribe that is present in five ESC partner states. I stand guided as to whether Ethiopia is part of part of ESC. Okay, so there's a certain tribe that is the Luo tribe that is in 5 ESC partner states. It's in Kenya, it's in Tanzania, it's in Uganda, it's in DRC, and it's in South Sudan. I was seeking a way in which the East African Business Council or the African Business Council can look into ways in which it can bring I'm also a Luo. It can bring Luo people together to do business and coexist together. Like currently in Nairobi, we have the Nairobi Cultural Week, which is to feel the vibe of Nairobi. But I have followed up and I have already realized the amount of revenue that has already been created now. So I was requesting whether these councils could look into ways in which we can have like a Luo cultural festival in which it starts in Kenya. I have been.
I want to stop you on that proposal. Do you know I want to stop you? The Business Council cannot do everything. The Business Council can come as close as getting you on a platform where you have conversations, and then as a people, you organize yourselves to have the festival. All right. I'm saying this because I want us to make very specific recommendations to agencies that actually have the power to do what we are asking them to do. So there is opportunity for those groups to meet in the region. It's not just that group. There are many other, even the Maasai are situated in several countries, but those groups cannot depend on the ESC to bring them together. The ESC has a cultural event. Do you want to do it in the body of that cultural event? If yes, then the recommendation you should be making should actually be to the politics group and should be to recommend to them that they add that there's need to convene the communities that are already in all the countries within your region to do those things you're saying. But on your first proposal about the remote jobs, what specific recommendation are you making?
The recommendation that I'm making, if I can paraphrase it, is can members from the EAC partner states be an exception in the sense that these councils have already gone before us and have already made it possible for us, even though we are not in the Western region, to start earning from that potential.
So you're asking the EAC to negotiate regulations so that youth in the region can access remote work from other areas that maybe they don't have access to.
Yes, and specifically Netflix tagging and
there's no need to limit it. When you give it to the EAC, they'll have to look at everything because they can't make regulations for one today and then consider it for something else tomorrow. Okay? So that point is made. And then, so one is regulation. The second thing is what? Having dialogue about the future of work on those areas of remote work so that they can be facilitated for youth.
Yeah.
All right, good. Did I see another hand? Okay, so at the back there, then you'll come to Maria.
Hi, my name is Isaac from Kenya, and please pardon me if it may sound as repetition, but I want to subscribe to the school of thought in regards to what my sister mentioned about publicizing some of these documents. I stand guided if I'm not on point rather, but this one was my feeling to say, I believe what you're presenting here from the different thematic groups that you're working on, be it from politics, business, gender, so on and so forth, at the end of the day, we might want to adopt this to say that these are our resolutions as we are leaving the summit. That's my assumption. I would really appreciate it much more if this was something which was done also in the previous summit, for the documents to be presented to us in whichever forum, for us to interact with them for a very simple reason. Some of these things that we are discussing here, in a way or another, might have been discussed in the previous summit. Then we want to understand where are they as we are speaking, what worked, what didn't work, so that as we are picking them up, we also get some learning curves from them. So if need be, we might deploy different techniques on how to address some of these agenda items that we are trying to present today. So my proposal will be, my sisters raised a very fundamental issue to say, let us have these documents, not only for this summit, but even from the last ones. We just interact to have an in-depth understanding. What was it that was discussed? What worked? What did not work? What can we do better moving forward? Thank you very much.
That's a very good proposal, Isaiah. That's a very good proposal. The point I was trying to separate is that that information on the post-summit agenda of the last summit was uploaded exactly 3 days after the summit ended last year. These things that you're discussing today are also supposed to be uploaded onto the website within that period of time. If it takes the longest, maybe a week, all right? So whether you can access it or not online, that is already sorted. It is available. Whether it can be shared with you, we normally create printed versions and then we create versions that can be circulated and the network always receives them. So it's a matter of sharing amongst you. But what I hear you saying is that progressive YouLead summits should have a session on the first day where we give an update on the post-summit agenda of the previous year. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay. So that's definitely something you can include in the action plan. It is a general recommendation that I would suggest we add onto the political group, Eduro, so that then, because this is going to be featuring on the first day, and the first day is the day of politics, we will be having a post-summit agenda update. Normally what we do, the recommendations of the things we are told to do appear in the next summit in the form of a launch. For example, sometimes it is the creation of an East Africa Youth Peace Network, and so it will be the launch of the Peace Network, or the creation of the Africa Youth Business Council, which then comes as a launch of a business council. But I hear you. At the beginning of the summit, you want to know what did you plan last year? What have you done before you proceed with the agenda? Sounds good. Maria, as the last one.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity. I wanted to just comment on what Pempo was saying about the African Standards Organization. And they're working in liaison with the lead negotiators on the AFCFTA in the respective countries. But these people that are doing this are people that are up there, have full-time jobs. They're not really concerned about, not necessarily not concerned, but they don't really know the exact challenges that the young food producers and traders are going through in terms of standardization and certifications. In fact, from what I found out from between the Kigali trip and now, is that they're still basing it on the global best practices. And we're calling for our own African standards. A lot of people make shea butter products, mangeti nut hair products, food products, and these are African products that should have our own standards. So that's what I mean, like we should be calling for our own unified ones that look at our products. And I'm not saying disregard the global ones, they should be a guide, but what I've seen is that they're still basing it on those ones. Thank you.
Helena, wherever you are, kindly note that amendment that we are talking about, not just harmonizing standards for certification and clearance of goods, but also talking about African standards as part of that recommendation. I will, is it burning? Is it on fire? Is it going to light up that tree? Is it a new recommendation, something that is not on the, okay. So then I'm going to request the Peace and Security Group to come and do their presentation. A clap for the business group.
Sorry. Sorry.
So from the business aspect, sorry, we wanted to call upon all the hub representatives and all startups and SMEs representatives to meet us after here so that you can give us your recommendations and we'll add here because you're the ones who are representing those startups and businesses. Thank you very much.
This is just the last submission for the business proposal. I think one brother early on said that it's really important that we have funding. I don't think we can undermine the importance of having funding because that's the reason why we don't, have as much startups. And a startup is not just a company that's starting up. A startup is a company that's showing like high potential for growth, and we're talking about like billions and millions of like US dollars. So I think it's really important that like the private sector is consulted, and maybe perhaps like next year for YouLead, we could actually involve private equity and venture capital firms that actually have the capital to fund these startups and ensure that they're given the access to finance that they need in order to actually grow. Because otherwise it's going to be very, very difficult without venture capitalist firms and private equity.
Thank you very much for that proposal. We had some in the room during the conversation. Sometimes you invite them and announce that they're there. Sometimes you invite them and they sit quietly and listen to the ideas they want to carry. But I hear you about financing. All I'm saying is that for whatever we're planning, this is a fundraising tool. But in terms of referral to venture capital, it's a recommendation that came up, I think, up to 2 years ago. So we have been sourcing investment partners to work with, and we try as much as possible to make sure they're an audience of our conversations in every summit. Only they select the ideas they want to fund. They don't just fund everyone because you made a presentation. Kindly refine politics and business rapporteur and chair, sit down and refine your action plans. Wani?
Yes, Stella, how are you? You need some water? Okay. Good afternoon. This is peace and security. I think you should be able to, those one who are from the organization sector. This is a concept note for your organization. Don't take it for anything. Take it as a time for you to do proposal. I will start with cross-border conflict. From our side, we look at these continental issues that really we need to focus much in terms of mitigating cross-border conflicts, because if we don't do that, it affects trade, and that also will support the business term. And then we look at the stakeholders that we need to have is, of course, the civil society, the regional bodies, ECOWAS, SADC, government, peace and security agents, and private sector, people with special needs. Civil society organization. These are both short-term and long-term because we cannot measure the outcomes of this program at the moment. The second thing, we look at the aspect of economic empowerment as an aspect of reintegration of the youth from combating violence or conflict. Economic empowerment is very important in that sense that as the stakeholders like civil society, international organization, partners, diplomatic mission, academia, we should be able to address such kind of issues in all aspects of our thematic engagement. Still, we cannot measure that. We say it's both short-term and long-term. We talk about issue of inclusion on policy making and engagement. We need to look more on to be stakeholders in policy making and policy influencing, which Stella mentioned that we don't have a political will, but we have obligation as citizens of that particular country to influence what kind of policies that we want to see, because that is part of our accountability. That brings aspect of inclusion, women, youth, people, all sectors of the society. And we look particularly issue from the being the stakeholders. We talk about the chief, we talk about our community leaders, even we talk about our families. How many of you have economic strategy planning on how I want to see my children grow in terms of their education, in terms of their business startup? Do we have those strategies, or we just send our children? We don't know where their future is. We need to have that way of grooming them. It's both on long-term and short-term. And then we look at issue of peace and security, particularly using international instrument that we have signed as member states, especially UN Security Council resolution when it comes to peace and security about women and youth. It's very important. We have seen African Union Youth Charter. These are particular instruments that we need to see that ratification. Up to today, there's some member states that they have not ratified this. And then localization agenda to this program becomes very hard. So we're talking at this a point of view that the member states need to be posed to see that ratification and integration, localization of these programs are very important for us to achieve peace and security. That is both long-term and short-term. And then we talk about when we say youth are partners, but we need to look at the aspect of youth are policy influencers in regards to engaging. That means within the AU, we need to see a commission particularly that brings all youth from different continents, different parts of Africa, to discuss matters related to peace and security, particularly at the aspect of youth perspective. And this only can be discussed during the yearly discussion of the member state, during the AU summit. That is also, and the partners that we need to engage, you are one of the partners. At your level, at what level do you engage in terms of what you need for yourself? You will not praise God to prepare for you for your wedding, but it is you to prepare your wedding. Thank you. I think that's both long-term and short-term. You know, when it comes to peace and security, it cuts across our cycle, our ecosystem as a human life. So we need to look at reintegration and rehabilitation programs. We have faced a lot of conflict. There are different forms of conflict we have in our society, but reintegration and rehabilitation programs is very important. Let's look at the northern region part of northern Uganda during the insurgents of Joseph Kony at the northern part of it. And then let's look at South Sudan, let's look at Libya, let me give that example for that citation. Now, they have been engaged in conflict. It's time to do rehabilitation programs when it comes to issue of trauma healing, issue of reconciliation, issue of even mental health are part of the strategies that we need to look at. I think I'm done with my proposal. Who is ready to fund my program? I think the partners that we need to look at, we normally say AU, AU. Did you call anyone to dress you this morning or to make you how beautiful you look or handsome you look? It's your own initiative, right? So we are not escaping the blame. You are part of the solution to this problem. So you should be taking responsibility of who you want to be. That is one. Civil society organization at the regional level need to work in profiling some of the key agendas when it comes to lobbying, profiling some of matters when it comes to human rights, issue of peace and security. If there is a human rights defender arrest of journalists, we should be able to profile, release all these, or we should be able to profile that to take ownership in terms of championing because of the political space that we have in some of the countries. We talk about evidence-based on and community policing. It's very important when it comes to peace building. If it is issue of crime, issue of idling in the society, we need to have a community policy programs that really address issue of vulgarity, issue of even early marriage, issue of drugs. It's very important when we bring that aspect, a community-based peace building approach. That will solve our interventions, and that brings us both regional, continental, let's say government, diplomatic mission, AU, and interstate agents. The other thing is also the Amnesty International that look at, let's say, compensations, because you need to see redress being done to people who have been affected by conflict. And that is one of the things that gives a confidence building, that gives healing, that gives trauma, that gives relief. That's why most of you people, when you're disappointed by your boyfriend or by your girlfriend, you start crying. That crying is relieving your stress. Oh, I really miss him. I miss her. At the end of it's a trauma healing. So it's very important for us to look at that aspect. And then we bring come issue of climate change that need to be invested. Climate change need to be a serious issue that we need to look at. And as in from yesterday discussion, we have looked at is how climate change is becoming issue of is insecurity, human security, health security, food insecurity. We have seen aspect of malnutrition. So all those aspects need to be looked at, and that is me and you, your organization, our international body. Those are the stakeholders that we need to engage with. Most importantly, one of the aspects of mitigating hate speech and early warning mechanism is we need to engage more in terms of advocacy and lobbying strategy. What are our advocacy strategy? Is it the diplomatic one? Is it non-violent, or it is a violent one? Normally we take it because we think that we are youth. We have the energy, we have everything. At the end of the day, it's like you need your mother to give you, or you need food, or you need you need to send someone to school, but you have not paid that person a school fee. How do you expect that person to continue with the school fee, with education? It's very difficult. So it's good that we need to see, we build our network with these policy influencers. Like yesterday, I really appreciate the South Sudan delegate. Thank you for really engaging.
Time.
You have given us to come with a strategy. We are giving you what we have made. Thank you for that submission. Because when you give me food to eat, let's come into dialogue. Thank you, Stella.
Very important.
That is very important. Okay, what we need to do is, please, let's try to change our advocacy skills, whether you work with human rights, whether you work as a health practitioner, governance, youth participation, policy influencing. Let's try to change our strategy on really engaging with our policy makers. Let's bring them too close. Let's bridge the gap. That's why we talk about intergenerational dialogue, and that's will mitigate the conflict. We look at private sector. Is strengthening private sector engagement in peace and security. Most often, we neglect the private sector being stakeholders to peace building or to peace and security. And if you look globally, it's the private sector that determines the economy of any country. Take your statistic, do your research, and you'll know how influential they are. So it's important that we engage with them to look at the aspect of how they can support in terms of bilateral engagement, business, investment, and how they can use their platform in terms of the economic forum to see how best peace and security can be maintained at the aspect of promoting economic prosperity. Of course, the last one, we talk about formation of transformative peace forum. We need to have this kind of exchange program at all the every member state in Africa to see how we contribute and share knowledge. We are in a global village, so we should not be selfish in terms of, but selfish does not mean you need to just be submissive. Our intellectual capital is very important for us to protect. So you should know anything you invest, there must be a reward to that investment, to that idea. So we thought of having a transformative peace forum that will bring youth from diverse background to discuss way forward to see how best peace and security can be achieved in Africa, even in the world, because we are members, particularly you are all members to UN and UN Peace Building Commission. We are all member states to peace and security. So we should be able to lobby at that aspect to see how we can translate this. And that is our submission from peace and security.
Thank you very much. My first reaction is that I think for the first time from this group, I hear very many proposals that need to be taken up by people who are here. So clap for them for that. My only problem is that those actions have been described as stories. Can we get very specific actions from peace and security on what people can do? You already have them on headlines, but define an action. If they're going to advocate, say advocate. If they're going to organize a training, say organize a training on this topic. Where you say, for example, that we need to engage our governments to ensure that we have delegations for young peace ambassadors to attend, I don't know, heads of state summit or other council of ministers meetings. Specify that that is exactly what you're recommending, all right? And that is going to improve that plan tremendously. But a really good job on identifying things that even the people here can actually be able to engage in. Is there any proposal that you think needs to be in this document that they have not mentioned? Becky, I see 4 hands on this side, and then there'll be 3 hands on your side. Please keep the interventions short.
Thank you very much. When I think about peace and security, the first thing that comes to my mind is the military. And in Swahili, we call them majeshi ya ulinzi na usalama. So I'm sorry, but just as a suggestion is that most of the recruitments that are being done kwenye haya majeshi ya ulinzi na usalama ni vijana. Kwa hiyo ni vijana aina gani wanaenda kwenye haya majeshi ya ulinzi na usalama?
English, please.
How do I say majeshi ya ulinzi na security forces or military forces like the police force, firearm brigade, all of defense forces? Thank you. So what kind of youth are entering into these defense forces, and what is the role of the civil society and our youth champions, our youth peace champions in liaisoning with the military and defense forces in ensuring that they build the kind of security forces that we wish to see? Because nothing about us without us. How can we talk about peace and security without the military and without the young people who are in these defense forces? So as a suggestion, the civil society and the youth who are in these peace mechanisms, very high level UN, AU, come down to our local military and defense forces and see how to advocate and how to lobby on some issues that can be directly impacted on those peace builders and those peacekeepers. For instance, types of training, engagement in implementation of some actions, okay, especially in areas with some peace issues. So the civil society has a place to directly influence through the government, but then directly to these peace forces, because there are so many of them in Tanzania and in other countries. We have the fire people, the police force, the what, and most of these recruitments are young people. The quality of young people entering, their impact, and how to liaison between the civil society, our peace champions, and the people on the ground. Thank you.
What specifically do you want the young people to do in the recruitment process?
The recruitment process is that when the young people enter, what kind of training do they have?
Okay.
Now the formal training of the military, and then now the civil society advocacy. Can we submit some sort of documents, all the things that we're discussing here, so that those people who are going to be carrying those things on the field have some kind of backup with it? Let's not train people who are not going to be on the front line. We're just like advocates and what can I say, wanaharakati. But then those youth who are there on the front, what kind of information do we want them to have? So something in that line. It's kind of vague. Maybe you can work on it further. Thank you.
Okay, from what I hear you saying, you're saying that you'd like us to make recommendations for the training programs of military and defense forces in the different countries, so that what? So that the youth can, because if you approach them, they would be asking us, what change do you want to, what is it that you want to change about our curriculum?
Many things are being said, to be more civic, to be more humanitarian, but maybe to carry our whole peacekeeping agenda so that it doesn't remain in this high level, nice fancy meetings, so that those young people on the front line actually benefit. Is there a policeman here? Is there a military man here? Peacekeeping involves those things. So how do those young people get those
influence the
these things?
curriculum of military and defense force trainings to cover YPS agenda?
Perfect.
Number two?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Saleh Ibrahim, and I'm from Uganda. I would like to make my submission mainly on border conflict by spotting an example of our country, spotting an example between our country, Uganda and Rwanda. Uganda and Rwanda had the border closed for almost 1.5 years, and many business people had to lose money. The businesses had to fall, the countries had to lose revenue in that due process. I would like to inquire whether there has been an engagement in the Peace and Security Forum with bodies like the ASFTA in creating neutral regulatory policies to such events.
Can I interrupt you? This session today, when I briefed you in the morning, I told you we are not asking questions, we are not inquiring, we are making recommendations. So don't ask me. Tell me, what do we do to address that thing that you're thinking of?
Okay, let me make a recommendation. Let me state it clearly. Yeah, the recommendation I would make that the peace and security forums should make engagement with bodies like the ASFTA to create neutral regulatory bodies between countries, such that even if there is conflict or maybe political conflict, it does not affect trade. That's my point.
Stella, I really thank you so much for that submission. And when we look at the point of strategic security studies, or at the point of security reforms, we have mentioned there aspect of security reforms that comes in terms of recruitment process and professionalism. And when you look at, we also mentioned it clearly in terms of inclusion, that we need to see more sectors included. So in the next forum, that when we are discussing issue of peace and security, we need to see the ministers of defense of all these countries, if we could get resources, such that whatever we discuss here, there will be ambassadors to what we are discussing. Thank you for that submission.
You said regulatory bodies to ensure that when there is conflict, youth businesses are not affected. I don't know if it's possible to regulate conflict in that way. So maybe you're actually making reference to something else. Recommend that the peace forum or that our peace actors need to negotiate with the business councils, the private sector authorities, and the regional business bodies to ensure that youth businesses are buffered in times of conflict. Is that what you're saying? Okay. Tobias, I hope you're getting that, eh? Okay. Number 3, if you can give the microphone to someone who has not spoken yet first.
Thank you very much. I'm Nyesiga Agatha again, and I would want to basically summarize everything in one thing that you should actually consider, the current speaker, that you've not really considered. Myself, I run a community-based organization in Kampala. I'm from Uganda, by the way. It is still a community-based organization, but we are using one way that has really, I can use it as a testimony: sports. Sports is one thing. If all of us yesterday were all looking out for Morocco game, Manchester United games, and everything, it is one way that can bring people together that in a way that you can't understand. We deal with many people from different countries: Somalia, Congo, Uganda, and different tribes, whereby we bring them together. Dealing with sports, you're using a kid.
Your recommendation.
My recommendation.
What do we do with sports?
Okay, with sports, I would. My recommendation is we make different tournament sports events, whereby we bring in people from different countries, Africa-wise, and then after that, after being happy and fun, we can sit on table and solve where the problem was. That is my recommendation. Nyesiga Agatha, Uganda. Thank you very much.
In order for me to put this in context, I'll basically say organize sports events to discuss the youth peace and security agenda. Thank you. And microphone to the next person, Rebecca. No stories, people, recommendations.
All right.
We have been telling stories the last 3 days.
No stories. My name is Isaac. I said, and I'm from Kenya Red Cross. Then just to add value to what my sister has mentioned about the young men and women whom are being enrolled to the armed forces, like in terms of the package, what is it that they really need to be taken through? And I think something very important to the security team, there's something we call IHL, International Humanitarian Law. So then I think, and this thing has only been administered to some specific sectors into the people whom are joining the armed forces. For example, in Kenya, we might want to put it like the GSU, for instance, in quotes, but the administration police, they're not taken through the same induction. This is very key because once everyone in the disciplined forces, they really get conversant in terms of what IHL stands for, then it really serves the interest of every other citizen in any particular states. So that will be my area of emphasis or recommendation rather.
IHL is in the curriculum of military training institutions as a standard global requirement. Those who don't know what IHL is, it's international humanitarian law. The question is whether they absorb the information, and I'm glad you're mentioning it from the Red Cross. So I'm sure you have participated in the trainings for GSU, for military on IHL. Normally there's a feedback they give you at the end of the training. They say, you're teaching us here, but when we get to the ground, we have a different protocol. So the proposal you should be making is not about whether or not it should be in the curriculum, because it's there. What you should be saying is, how do we make them uphold those? Think about the line that you will use to give a recommendation on that, and then I'll come back to you later. One line, not a story. Next person, Becca.
Yes, thank you very much. My name is Timweske Derek Collins, and I'm from Uganda. I work with Uganda National Students Association. I just want to supplement on our point.
No, I don't want supplements.
Yes, and then I'm making a suggestion or a proposal. As Uganda National Students Association in Uganda, in the recent months we have been going through as a country a lot of insecurities of terrorism, demonstrations. The UPDF of Uganda resorted to come to us, and they started trainings of all institutional leaders. And as I talk, the first court has been passed out. So my recommendation is, for matters of peace and security in the region, other countries can also adopt the same measure to curb such kind of things, that let the young people be trained in such kind of field so that they be ready to counter-react such kind of people who would come and attack them or destabilize their countries. And also, they have been trained on how to make intelligence, to get intelligence from various people. So as the association, that's what we have resorted to. Thank you.
There's something very interesting about what you're saying, and I think the peace and security people are trembling even as you speak. There is a very thin line between ensuring that everybody is participating in peace and security and militarizing of the state. Now, there are places where the citizens rarely interact with the military until the military is being sent to go and fight somewhere. So they would not appreciate any entrance into the university, for example, to train student leaders on how to react to conflict. So we need to have a very delicate conversation about that, because there's sensitivities around how much of state needs to be involved in that do not want to see the military on the streets with guns.
Can I add just to that?
No. I want us to finish this feedback session so that we allow.
Hello. So I'd like to focus on the fact that in this last quarter of 2022, it is common knowledge that a military leader in Uganda. It is common knowledge that a military leader in Uganda. Sorry? They can't. With our president. Oh. My mic is back on.
Okay, so
So, but still, it is common knowledge that those comments were made. So, as much as apology was made and everything, we as Kenyans still feel that we have that third eye. Okay, is it something that is being planned? Is it something that is forthcoming? So the recommendation that I'd like to make to this committee is, could we foresee such a disaster, and may you please come up with a pre-disaster, disaster management, and post-disaster management model.
There are mechanisms within the ESC for early warning. There are rules against that incidents you're defining. I think I know what you're talking about. There are rules against it. But every once in a while, we have that one person who will wake up in the morning and decide otherwise. And I believe there are administrative ways through which that has been dealt with. That lady, and then we move to the three who are on this side. They've been waiting for long.
Thank you very much. My name is Liz Janzi from Uganda. My recommendation would be actually through a question to the committee, that did you assess the status quo in countries in the countries in Africa that we are having, because you see that the youth are in the military, for example, in Uganda, but I would give an example that they do not earn as much as they need to earn. Are you putting that employment aspect of how the youth are going to benefit from this, from involving in peace and security in countries that they involve themselves in the security, in the security system? Then number two is that how are we going to separate the politics and peace and security as youth in Africa? Then my recommendation would be that if you're involving, I heard you saying that you're going to involve ministries, mostly now this would go to Ministry of Gender and Development, then the Ministry of Security, something like that. Are you going to incorporate the fact that there are players outside governments that can actually give a hand in helping the development of peace and security? I would give an example for Uganda.
No need for examples. That recommendation
Okay.
should be taken, that they should include actors outside of government.
Yes, then I would want to emphasize on the aspect of how the youth are benefiting from involving in peace and security, because we see insecurity comes from the youth majorly. For example, in Uganda, when they involve in acts of insecurity like theft and everything, it happens because they do not earn enough, yet they are the biggest players in the peace and security political space. Thank you very much.
I think we had them making a recommendation about working with the private sector and business community to increase employment so that they can be able to address the needs of young people who are engaging in security because of lack. Concise recommendations, please.
Thank you so much. No stories, but to the point. With a reference, without reference, nothing. I would like just to supplement what my brother said about rehabilitation and reintegration of the former child soldiers. That one, we already have a framework which all East African regions, I think they were involved in 2015 when we were launching Alone and Frightened in Serena Hotel from Kampala. So we already have the document. Only that there's no one who can back. I tried to reach to the member of parliament, but no one could back me. I think this is the right time. I can make it reach to you so that make it as a recommendation for the youth.
You're not making it reach to us. We are going to collaborate with you to have more organized advocacy for the implementation of the framework.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Another supplement on the amnesty. I think Northern Uganda should act like a litmus paper so that we see how can it work, and if it can work really, how about other countries? How can they adopt it? Because we already tested and it is real, can work, and it is also a recommendation. I think DRC and other countries could also take the opportunity.
Piloting the framework for rehabilitation, DDMR, piloting it in specific countries, and you're saying Northern Uganda could be one of the areas?
Yes.
And then replicating the lessons in other parts of the continent?
Exactly.
Okay.
And then lastly, as a recommendation, I think we are trying to forget about reconciliation as one of the key things in the community. We need to have at least committees for reconciliation and yes, so that they tell the stories, because right now we are seeing people are trying to inherit that. Of course, Dr. Obote committed atrocity in central Uganda, and no one could tell the truth. So we need to have the committees who can tell the truth, and we need to reconcile.
Okay. The mandate of the Arusha Peace Forum is prevention of conflict.
Yes.
So we may have limitations on how much we can engage in reconciliation, but if there's any part of the reconciliation that is contributing to prevention, then do you have any specific recommendation?
Not sure, but that is my suggestion.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. The last two, next to the banner.
Thank you. My name is Abacha Ahmed Ibrahim from South Sudan. I represent persons with disability. Building on nothing for us without us has made me to come to this summit. However, it was difficult. I managed. So I have one recommendation. We need to advocate for the establishment of Disability Enterprise Fund. By doing so, we need to use local resources like the companies. We have companies operating, every day, but they contribute nothing to us. So
ESC, the same. And then once you choose what your priorities are and agree as a team on what your priorities are, you can, go for lunch at that time. But you're not just visiting the political, you're visiting political rapporteur, you're visiting the business rapporteur, you're visiting the peace and security rapporteur and the gender equality rapporteur. Am I making sense? I'll explain it after we finish.
Hi, we are from the Gender Equality Group, and the two of us will be presenting. I am a bit under the weather, so my group mate will help. So to start off with what we discussed yesterday, especially on gender equality, because our theme for this summit is digital access to work and the future, digital access and the future of work. The first problem that we identified was cyberbullying, and we went straight to check on what can we do for Africa so that we can have safe spaces when it comes to digital spaces. So we realized that the AU has a framework on data protection and a convention also on personal data protection. The 1 hour is not enough to review this document, so we committed to ourselves that we will review them with time and then maybe send recommendations to either YouLead team or the APRM team for reviewing, because I believe that technology also moves with time, and maybe there are certain stuff in the documents that we will need to review. The one thing we know, you're so loud. So the one thing that we noticed is that there's also the information gap amongst us, and the one thing we would like to do first of all is to popularize these documents and these laws so that the member states can also be aware that they exist, because the AU has these things but they're not being implemented, first of all because the people themselves do not know their rights, and the member states also are not aware that these things exist. So popularization, and that we take the actors of this are the civil societies, and that under that we have the NGOs, we have the government, of course, maybe through organizations like the National Youth Council, and we also have the AU themselves. So I think as every member state should have like a task force that is tasked to do the popularization, but also as youth groups, maybe we can take it upon ourselves to also do this education and sensitization on these documents. And the organizations like UN Women should also take it upon themselves to empower women and young girls in digital spaces, because we realize there's still a gap. In as much as we think that our girls and women are educated, there's still a gap when it comes to these people accessing digital spaces. A timeline we gave ourselves 1 year, and within 1 year we also felt if we come back here next November or December and then tell ourselves now we need to know where we as a continent are, it might be impossible. So we also are going to come up with indicators to show us how far these things are, or to show us like we talked about this, so how far are these regions doing in this? We need indicators so that by next December we will say that we achieved on this area, but on this area we are still here because of this and this. The other action that needs to be taken is on education. We agreed that there's also a gap when it comes to the curriculum that we are using in our schools. So this one will require the bottom-up approach. That is, we start from the very, like the grassroots schools. We call them not grassroots, but the primary, the lowermost schools. First of all, to review the curriculum on gender issues and sensitize the young ones so that as they grow up, they are aware and sensitized on these matters. And that is also on sexual education. It should be introduced the same way we've been I think most most schools have been teaching HIV like a compulsory subject. Maybe it's time also we introduce the sexual education a subject. There's also a free accessible to education that is both in lower and higher institutions. So as a continent, as we grow, we realize that education is also becoming expensive and inaccessible to some people. And as a continent, we need to decide where our education sector has to go for us to be able to even grow. So there's also another issue we also discussed on when it comes to education is that we have some toxic and backward cultures that also prevent our children and maybe both men and women from growing and being sensitized on gender issues. So what we recommend as a group is that as African continent, we need to identify those cultural laws are not written. Are not written laws. Let me first note that. And we need to identify those very toxic cultural practices that prevent us from moving forward. For example, FGM, that we can eliminate for us to be able to achieve gender equality. I believe all of us are cognizant of the challenges that FGM brings, especially to the young girls. And the actors on this will be the UNICEF, that is on civil societies, religious organizations. I think you guys can relate to the fact that some of our countries are very, depending on their religions, there are certain subjects that are not being taught or talked about. The UN Women, youth organizations that we represent, and of course the government. And I would just like to mention that when it comes to the government, it's upon us as we go back to our countries to identify the groups that can also help us to sensitize the government, because we realize that in every of this, we need political goodwill for implementation. We might have them somewhere, but because there's no political goodwill, the implementation becomes a problem. And then limited access to justice. So if you look at, let's say, like individual countries, or even in so many protocols that have been passed globally, you realize that we have good recommendations and we have good laws that can protect gender-based issues. The problem is implementation and access to justice, because our law enforcers are also not very consistent when it comes to implementation. For example, if you're required that somebody convicted of a sexual offense is supposed to be imprisoned for life, so why would a court negotiate and give them something like 7 years, things like that? So we came up with the establishment of gender desk within our judiciary, our judicial systems, as we move maybe to a few years coming, we'll have gender courts. Yeah, so basically we have gender desk in most of our judicial systems to address this, and the people we need to take up these things are the civic societies, the civil societies, the governments, and maybe the judicial systems. Also, so the timeline for this is 1 to 2 years, and as I said, we are also going to come up with indicators to help us to show us how we are doing. So the other reason I kept on mentioning indicators is as a group we have committed to also be champions for these issues, because we believe some of them just require us to keep on making noise to our government, keep on addressing them with whoever cares to listen, for them to be implemented and for them to be taken seriously. I think we also got to climate justice. I think you can speak to that.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so for our last point, we talk about climate and gender justice. How do we ensure that both women, men, and young people are covered? And we talk about empowering women and young people, ensuring that we build their resilience around climate justice, so that, because we know during humanitarian crisis or even climate crisis, women and young people are the first responders. So to ensure that they are able to respond in time and adequately, we need to build their resilience. We need to make sure that they are on the front line and they know what to do in terms of crisis. And also, we talk about ensuring that we've also built social cohesion among young people in humanitarian setting so that they can be able to come together and take actions that will benefit their society or country or wherever they are. So our actors we included are the UNFCCC. We know that they are the branch of the UN that is responsible for the climate issues. We also talk about INGOs that are into climate justice work. And we also talk about youth-led movements. And this covers all of the different unions, alliances, networks that are working around climate crisis throughout Africa. And also we talk about ensuring that for our timeline, we say we want to do this maybe in a year. And this can be achieved when we do post-COP27 agenda as young people from Africa. How do we ensure that we know at COP27, there was a new funding facility that was set up for loss and damage. Now, how do we ensure that it's also captured within the AU plan of action on just transition? How do we ensure that they also tackle the issue of loss and damage in Africa? So yes, these were our points, and we look forward to your feedback.
Thank you very much. A clap for gender. First of all, I had a comment for peace and security on your component on climate. I feel like you rushed through it. It was a bit underdeveloped, so you need to think specifically about what you need to do. I am sorry I'm making that comment just before I congratulate the gender team for actually doing an elaborate job of saying specifically what they want to see happening in the next 1 year concerning matters of climate security. Let's refine peace and security, and in the next steps we are going to see how to make sure that we tighten up all those for this to make sense for both youth and women. Having said that, for the other recommendations, I feel like you've left them at a very general level. Could you be more specific about exactly what you're going to do about legislation? When you talk about legislation that already exists and you want to follow up implementation, what level of follow-up are you doing? Are you doing advocacy? Are you paying courtesy calls to a cabinet secretary? Are you paying courtesy calls to a department at the ESC? Are you paying courtesy calls to a department at the AU? Is it convening of the women caucuses in the RECs? What are you doing? Just say specifically what you're going to be doing so that it then sharpens those completely. Because I know for gender, we have a lot of frameworks. So majority of the work is actually follow-up. Is there any recommendation? Hey, nice. Becky, there are 2 hands, 3 on this side. And how many on that side? 1? I know.
Hello, everyone. Very good job, gender equality team. My recommendation would be on the issue of peace and women. Actually thought of speaking on it during the peace and security conversation, but it still fits here because on the gender mainstreaming issue. Gender mainstreaming issues, according to the Peace Commission strategy on women, it's very, very key for it to be implemented, because it is through peace, it is through gender mainstreaming, we're able also to involve both genders to participate on the issues of peace.
How do you want it implemented? What specific recommendation?
Trainings during the trainings, and especially by the CSOs, they should focus more on ensuring that they gender mainstream to implement the peace and security.
Okay.
Yes, issues, because currently we're having women, according to the most conversation that we have. I sit in the Mombasa County Action Plan on preventing and countering violent extremism. Most of the conversations that we are having before, it's having women, or rather seeing women as victims. I mean, as victims rather than perpetrators.
So trainings on WPS and gender mainstreaming.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Yes, at the back there. The gentleman, quickly. It was not you, it was the one behind you.
Okay, thank you so much. I'm Abe from Uganda. These things have been
on gender and women empowerment. These things have been done very well in Uganda. And when we talk about gender equality, you realize that nothing much we have to do about that, but it is simply empowering women, and that's what I see. And in Uganda, we have empowered women. When it comes to the seats in the parliament, very many ladies.
Your specific recommendation?
Yes, I'm coming to that. One, recommendation, come and study what is Uganda doing. Two, the platform for ladies is available. So all we need to do is to encourage young people down there. I happen to be lecturing in some universities in Uganda. Ladies do not come up to show. Even in class, I teach mathematics. They are down, they are not courageous. You have to encourage them. Please do this, come up, apply for this. You give them opportunities.
Why do you want to get me in trouble? And I've had a very peaceful meeting.
No,
Who
no,
has
no.
sent you?
Okay, listen. What I'm saying is, we need to encourage ladies to take up space.
Okay.
What we have to do, let's go back, encourage young ladies. Otherwise, the space is available, opportunities are available. We have done everything to encourage ladies, to empower them. Let us stop the issue of gender equality. We shall never be equal.
Okay.
Otherwise, I'll be pregnant the other day and become pregnant.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Before the next person takes the microphone, yeah, hand him the microphone. Don't speak. Rwanda. What is the percentage of women in your National Assembly? 60%. Uganda, what is the percentage of women in your parliament? Huh? Yes, Uganda. You do not have facts about your country. That is why you're saying what you're saying. Rwanda is leading in terms of percentage of women representation in this entire continent. Sometimes when you pick up this microphone, don't abuse the privilege. I keep on saying you will think your mother's food is the best until you go and taste the food cooked by somebody else's mother. All right? So if you're saying we need to engage in learning on best practices, I can tell you what Uganda is doing well as far as women are concerned. So then your proposal should be that the gender equality group should include an intervention on learning, sharing, and exchange of knowledge and best practices in the region. Yeah. But not to say that Uganda is where we should go and learn about representation, for example. There are better lessons in Rwanda. Having said that, gentleman with the microphone, do not get me in trouble. I have had a peaceful meeting.
Thank you so much. I'm going to use just less than a minute. Well, I'm just going to give complimentary remarks to this session of today. At least it has been a little bit better than what we've been doing. And I want just to thank you so much for today's session. The participants, thank you.
Oh. Next. Thank you for the compliment. We appreciate and we'll keep it up.
Okay, thank you again for this time. I'm here from Tanzania. What I like to propose and also say that is forgotten, it is the family constitution. You cannot talk gender if you don't go back to the family. You cannot say about women empowerment if the mothers, they don't love their own children. We women, we hate each other, but we are promoting gender. So I like what you're advocating from gender to UN to East Africa. Let's start from the family level. Let's promote, friendly sexual reproductive health system from the family level. Okay. And when you're talking about gender, please, men engagement, because when you say without us, you cannot help us. So if you are talking about gender, it is about both sex. So please, men engagement is involved. If you look at Tanzanian statistics right now, men are more violated, the boy child, more than the girl child right now in the statistics. If you go to the statistic bureau of Tanzania. So please, while we are talking about gender and all that thing, please remember to involve the boy child.
Let me try and phrase what you're saying. You're saying that we should focus on perpetuating positive family values.
That is what I'm trying
Number
to
one.
say.
Number two, you're saying we should advocate for friendly adolescent sexual and reproductive health services.
From the family, that if it's SBOs or NGOs, like we can try to teach, the health systems, like the ones which are providing it, because maybe family, they're shying away from it. So if it's a youth, there is a center that they can go, which they believe is a safe place for them to go and acquire that education, not from pornographies.
Advocate for friendly adolescent sexual and reproductive health services for the youth,
Yes.
and public health education on sex, or sex education.
That men are engaged, please.
And men's engagement in promotion of gender equity and equality.
Yes.
Okay. No, just note down what they're saying. Where is your rapporteur? Priska, I hope you're noting down everything that we are discussing here. Yes.
Okay, thank you very much once again. Basically going to go to the point of limited access to justice. The problem why women normally don't get justice is because it always needs money, economic problems. So the basic thing we can do about this is providing pro bono services to the women, right from the grassroots, because most of them are very quiet because they don't have the money to go and face it. And I'm making a request to you, President, and my colleague, that if you could please me have access to that committee, because I'm a gender specialist, Makerere University. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that. There's a gentleman on the right who had his hand up. He's gone. Okay, so I can see you, don't panic. The guy in the black shirt and then the lady in pink will be the last one to speak. Very short recommendations.
Thank you. I was advocating on youth economic power, especially for African youth. If we are going to have to cut across all these sectors we have been discussing, gender, into the governments, into our movements as youth, we need funding. Now, if we need funding, we cannot always depend on international organizations to be pulling off YouLead and everything else. What about African businesses? What are they doing to make sure that these movements, these gender-based violences,
what is your recommendation?
Yes. So I was looking at what if we can advocate for more eligibility to African startups and African businesses that are already running here, if they can get more equity from the government and less maybe taxes or something, and then this money could be transformed into CSR. They could push more money into our CSR projects. Right now, we could be sitting at a YouLead that is sponsored by an African company, but we are not. And this is because it has been a trend that the businesses in Africa do not believe and do not support the movements that are actually positively changing our community.
I think I have to stop you from saying that before it arrives as a full statement on our social media platforms. YouLead has been heavily supported by businesses, and YouLead continues to be supported heavily by businesses. What you're saying is that we need to advocate and negotiate for better access to equity for startups in the continent.
Not only startups, but also for our forums.
Also for youth programs,
Yes.
Support for youth programs. Yes. Noted. Business rapporteur, Helena, got that?
So thank you very much. You help us to lead it. Actually, I wanted to clarify on the same because I'm coming from the hubs background. There's a lot of funds that are supporting women right now, specifically, a lot of them, but they are not advocated to reach the right people during the right time. So if YouLead can help us to find a way, I'm not so sure how, but to find a way on how to advocate that so that those funds can go to the right people. Having a startup, my co-founder is a lady and she's the CEO. She's the one which is she's leading it. Almost every week we have more than 7 applications that are coming out only for women-led startups. So if you guys can help us to lead on that and to see how they can get these funds and utilize on them, because it's not that the funds are not there, they are there. but we don't know how to get them. And on the policy part, sorry, we have policies in most of the countries on the hiring of in terms of percentage. For example, in my country, the women are too many. I don't remember the numbers specifically, but it showed from census that women are many than men. So we have to push more into hiring more women than men as well. But the policies that have been created have not been advocated and being pushed to be implemented. So if you can help us to implement those policies within our countries. Thank you.
Pushing for equitable employment of women, disseminating information about the funds available for women. Now to cross to the other side, the gentleman in the black shirt. Okay, the man is back. The one in the black coat was the first one I had selected.
Two recommendations to two different groups, yeah, business and gender. Advocating for the broadening of the political space to include illiterate women to participate without deterrence. I have a case of a Kenyan PhD graduate from Harvard that left parliament without saying even a single word from 2002 to 2005. Yet, Honorable Maison Leshomo, you know her, you may, an illiterate, she would push policies in parliament and ensure they are implemented. To the business committee, please stop Kenya or any other individual country that wants to make deals with the EU, America, without involving the other partners. Please recommend that to EABC. Yes, thank you.
What I hear you saying is participatory engagement in negotiations of business with other RECs outside of the continent. But I also hear you saying that we need to create space for women to participate.
Illiterate women, because educated women.
I am specifically saying women because it seems your definition of illiterate may not necessarily be the standard definition of illiterate.
It depends on the school you went to.
No, it does not depend. It does not depend with the school you went to. It depends on the global standards of definition of illiterate.
At least basic education, Stella.
So space for women to participate and empowerment of those women to participate in those spaces effectively.
Yes.
And all groups of women to participate.
Yes.
Excellent.
Thank you.
When you say illiterate, it means someone who does not even know how to write their name.
Yes.
Yeah. So the lady in pink.
Greetings all, my name is Daisy Jerop from Kenya, and my recommendation will be an umbrella to cover both gender, peace and security, business and politics. This is a space that is available in the social media spaces, and we are advocating for access for future work in the digital spaces. This is the entertainment industry. My recommendation is if AU can have a way that we can have something like Africa's Got Talent. It's a very huge thing. It will be a platform that, for example, the member states, Kenya, for example, we can identify a gap that we have as a country. Maybe it could be gender, it could be peace, it could be in business, and then we do our talents, the talent that will go and showcase in that space will cater for or will showcase the space that we have as a country. So in that case, maybe we have a space where all the member states, they come, they showcase their talent. It is a way of competition and also a way of creating space. It also creates unity. It will also give us space for getting one currency in Africa. So please, if we can have that space, we can be helped and all our problems will be solved, and also the talent of our Africans will be exposed to the world. Thank you.
Organizing an African talent search. Africa has got talent. I believe the actors are going to be coming from more sectors than the gender sector, but I would like us to clap for the gender equality group for a good job well done. Now, my plan was for us to go back into the group and review all the plans, not in the groups we were in, but in the REC groups, and review all the plans and select our priorities. But because of time, this is my proposal. We have 4 RECs if I'm not wrong, represented here, and correct me if I'm wrong. We have the EAC, which has the majority of representation here. We have ECOWAS, we have SADC, and we have ECAS. Is there anyone from AMU here? Anyone from the Africa Maghreb Union? So it's those 4 we have. And I have 4 rapporteurs. My rapporteurs, please stand up. My rapporteurs, please stand up. Where's Priska? I don't see Priska. Helena, where are you? And Tobias? Oh, good. Where is Priska and Helena? Can somebody find me Priska and Helena? While we're at it, the EAC is being chaired by Kenya. So Kenya, kindly find someone to mobilize the EAC group. Kenya will be the first ones to meet the rapporteur on politics, Eduro. Am I making sense? So you're meeting, from this point, we're organizing ourselves in RECs, okay? But I want the chair of the REC to be the one mobilizing you to meet the rapporteur on politics. Your only job will be to tell the rapporteur of all the things that the group of politics has prioritized. What is the EAC? What does the EAC want to prioritize out of that list? So you're just choosing. Once you choose, your job is done. Unless you have any special recommendations you want to make for your region, then you can proceed. If you have special recommendations, just make sure the rapporteur records that. Eduro, am I clear? Now, SADC is currently being chaired by DRC Congo. So DRC, can I see DRC would nominate a leader from DRC who will coordinate SADC to, yes. No, you people don't know that these people are in 2 RECs. It is currently, SADC is currently being chaired by His Excellency Tshisekedi. So they will mobilize SADC to meet the rapporteur and chair on business and choose the priorities for SADC from that list. Okay? The things that have been presented today, you choose your priorities and make sure that the rapporteur has them documented. DRC, do I get some agreement from you that I'll get a representative from your side to mobilize? Perfect. Now, ECOWAS is currently being chaired by Guinea-Bissau. Do we have anyone from Guinea-Bissau? If we don't have someone from Guinea-Bissau, Nigeria co-chaired. So, do we have someone from Nigeria who is going to mobilize ECOWAS? You have Burkina Faso. Okay, so Burkina Faso is not sharing, but if we don't have representatives from those groups, then you can proceed. Mobilize the ECOWAS group to meet the peace and security group and select your priorities. All right? And then we have ECAS. ECAS, you're going to be the first to meet the gender equality group. ECAS is currently being chaired by, wait, did I see the president of where? Hold on. Oh, Pierre Buyoya of Burundi. So Burundi, please, not Pierre Buyoya, what am I talking about? Who is chairing ECAS right now? Cameroonians. Do we have someone from Cameroon here? Aziz. Aziz, can you commit to mobilize ECAS so that they can meet the rapporteur on gender equality and give their priorities? So what you're going to do, once you finish with one rapporteur, you go to the next rapporteur, select your priorities, like that. When you finish that business, you're done for the day. I suspect the EAC conversation will be the longest because there are many. So I suggest that you coordinate those conversations in a way that everyone will get a chance to meet the rapporteurs and select their priorities. Am I clear? Yes? The head of the block is mobilizing their people to consider the proposals you have and pick the priorities. So why I want them to come to you is because I don't think they were writing everything. So they just come to you, you run them through quickly, they select what their priorities are, and that's all. Yeah? So I want us to do almost like a speed dating so that every region gets to meet every rapporteur and select their priorities. Are we together? Once you're done, lunch is served. In the event that you don't finish before lunch, feel free to do it after lunch. Just make sure that your rec has its priorities covered. Are we together? Are we together? Okay, great. Thank you so much for collaborating for this conversation. It was a difficult conversation because I was not going to allow you to tell stories or to continue explaining the problems, but at least we have had our priorities identified and we are able from this point to develop some form of a post-summit agenda. Elda, are you okay? Yes, you're mobilizing ECOWAS. Where I don't have someone is ICAS, and I'm hoping we'll get someone from ICAS to mobilize ICAS. All right? Did you get Priska and Elena to? Are we clear? Good people. So I'm banking on the people who are chairing the RECs to mobilize your different RECs, meet the rapporteurs, and select your priorities. The person who's chairing the REC, in case you don't know who the rapporteur is, come to me and I will tell you. Okay? I'll be around the whole afternoon. After that, I'm hoping to meet the chair and rapporteur from the first exercise, chair business. I'm hoping to meet the chair and rapporteur for the first exercise here at Pan-Africa, this room, at 4:30 p.m. Okay? Chair and rapporteur for every group, I'll meet you here at 4:30 p.m. And I'm hoping that the chairs of the RECs as well will come along. So Eldar, whoever ESC will choose from Kenya, whoever ECAS will choose from whichever country that is, and whoever ECOWAS will, no, whoever SADC will choose from DRC to mobilize the same. All right? 4:30 p.m. here. The rest, after you give your priorities, feel free to take a break and chill. The business of the day is done. Thank you so much for your cooperation. Huh? The time? The thing is, I can't dictate how long the blocks will take because it depends on what their priorities are. That's why I'm insisting that the chairs just manage the conversation to ensure that then they don't take too long. Yes, but I highly suspect that the ESC will keep you the longest. Yeah? Okay. I'm handing over the microphone to the MC to make some announcements that will be relevant for your afternoon.
Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause for Stella, even as you move. Thank you very much, Stella. The post-summit agenda is one of the most important as well as the most difficult to generate. So we always give it to a reliable person and very dependable. Stella, thank you very much for that. Ladies and gentlemen, we are going for double lunch and tea at the same time. And the afternoon is going to be quite interesting. It's free for you to enjoy. Elimu Yetu organization still has the games, the Scrabble, the chess, the cards, darts. All of them will be assembled at the eating place after the lunch. But also for those that are staying on campus and also those who may have clothes to use, we also have a gym. But to access it, you just need the door card that you're using to enter your room. So you can also access the gym. We also have a library. You can read the books, but do not carry them out. So you enjoy the library there. And then in the evening, we are working out something with Elimu again to have traditional dancers and musicians to come and entertain us. So after dinner, it will just be a free concert. Maybe MC Benny and Rebecca will be here to allow us dance and connect and interact across the continent. So please, those are the aspects that will be happening. And then, very, very seriously, For those that have flights tomorrow and your arrangement was with the MSTCDC, you are happy to visit the front desk and make sure that everything is well coordinated so that you are not left behind. All that is happening as we have lunch and the tea. But there was also an announcement from a lady who has just moved, I don't know, maybe a key or something, but that will also be announced in case you have an aspect. So thank you very much. On behalf of the organizing committee, I want to say that thank you for coming and being part of the processes. For anything that has not gone well to your expectation, pardon us and give us the feedback in a good way. We shall be able to pick it up and make the summit better. Yes. Then also those that will be part of the Arusha experience, lists were provided for you to register. Transport will be provided to these places, but in case they require entrance fee, then you will have to pay according to the specifications. East Africans pay a certain amount, and those that are from other parts of Africa and the world, you pay a different amount. Those are some of the things we are trying to work on as a summit. But there will be transport. There are some places that are free for you to enter, like Lake Tuluki, there you can go, but if you want to go on the canoe, you will have to pay. The forms are with a gentleman called Lugome, but we shall also try to put at the front desk office for that. Also, the front desk office is able to change your money from dollars to Tanzanian shillings, and the reverse is also true. They can reverse from Tanzanian to dollars. So for any lost items, for any inquiries, please visit the front desk. And remember, we still have one more day, which is the Arusha experience, which is tomorrow, but this afternoon is free. So we shall not be policing anybody around. We don't like to do that, but just find yourself in the right spaces and interact and connect as much as possible. So I don't know whether the DJ has a song as the people go for lunch, but thank you very much, CA&C, Cultural Arts Center, for providing amazing sound, the MSTCDC for providing the space, and all our lovely partners for partnering with us and making the summit a success to this point. Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup. Mwanyala navi, mwasinja butsibu.
Ukawa